requirement to notify,
All you have to do.
but it may well be, I mean, I didn't
When
read
you
the
go
whole
to
bill.
non-public and then on
Obviously it clear, because then each town can
That's
decide
it.
if they
Okay,
want to
what
do
time's
it.
your thing start?
And the state's not in the
between
way.
8:30 and 9.
But we got to make sure that's what
I
it
have it. I
says.
can
Yeah.
say until everybody's here, basically.
But yeah, if you want, I could give you some of my thoughts on it. I don't know, I guess it's kind of related to rail trails a little bit, I don't know.
Well, not initially, but I think it's the next step.
Yeah,
Because I know there was a movement to allow four-wheelers on a lot of the groomed snowmobile trails, which the snowmobilers are like, no.
yeah.
And the four-wheeler people say, well, why not, if you want to have access to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, generally, my thought is, I work a lot with the snowmobile clubs. I don't know if this is gonna be a repeat or what.
Yeah.
And what I like about them is they're really well organized.
Yeah,
And they
Presentation,
have their
I think
etiquette
you're
rules
gonna-
and they follow them. And if I'm on the trail skiing and the snowmobiles come, they slow down, they move over.
yeah.
If it's
One of these
ATV,
because you're first anyway.
be as organized or as well etiquette, you know, and that's kind of, to me, the rub, because they could become flying around the corner, right, and they go zipping by. And when there's no snow, they tend to tear up the trails. But that's part of the sport,
Yeah,
you know? I mean, I rode a dirt bike when I was a kid. We didn't go out there to cut around the woods, we went out there to.
We
see how
go back
fast
in
we could go.
four-wheel.
Can we make that turn before we hit that tree, you know?
Right.
yeah.
That's part of being outside in New Hampshire. It's, you know, a lot of white people are up here is to be able to be outside. You
Right,
participate in a variety of sports, especially across different seasons.
right. So now, you probably know the funding of how the state private property doesn't allow motorized vehicles, with the exception of snowmobiles in the winter.
Yeah.
So there is that stipulation you have to get passed to allow it. On the other hand, they do a lot of funding through registration fees.
Well, I think that's the motivation behind this, is to increase that,
Right.
you know. But
One concern is like RTP, which is a grant we use quite a bit, comes from off-road vehicle gas tax.
yeah,
So the U.S. Department of Transportation does this calculation, they kind of estimate how much fuel is being purchased for off-road vehicles like snowmobiles and dirt bikes and OHRVs and all that stuff, right? And then they calculate how much grant money is available for this recreational trails program grant based. Okay. Well, if the OHRVs are out on the road, does that amount go down? Because they're not on the trail, they're on the
right.
now, but I don't know how that calculation is done at the USDOT level, so,
Well, there's gotta be hundreds of them, if not thousands.
of OHRV,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's all, okay, sorry.
You want to start a meeting?
By my computer, it says it's 8:30. And even though it says 8:34 there, it's, this, it says,
Atomic watch says.
okay.
I can join remotely.
Okay.
That's fine, too.
Good.
All right, commissioners meeting Wednesday, February 12th. All commissioners are present. And first and foremost, as always, public comment. Don't see any real public, I see people here with purpose. So I'm gonna move on. Elected officials and department head updates. Doug, do you have anything for us today?
No, I don't. I'm just listening in. Thanks.
Alrighty. Kim,
I do not, I'm just listening in.
we're flying today. Cheryl?
At some point, I wonder if I should put in the record my fourth quarter report, but we can do that afterwards.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna move on to schedule items, master agenda items, number 1240, Monadnock Economic Development Corporation. We're here, Cody Morrison's here today
Where
to
is
receive to receive an update on the ongoing work of MEDC and so we're, whenever you're ready, I don't know if you have to have anything up there, or you're just gonna freelance it and just speak.
Not totally freelance, I did come prepared, but we do not have any visuals today, but I will say that was quick today. It's nice when we can blast through an agenda. As much as I enjoy hearing from the department heads. But anywho, as Chris mentioned, my name is Cody Morrison, the Executive Director of Monadnock Economic Development. The purpose of today is to not only provide an update to the commissioners and to the county and to the public about what we've been up to and with some of our initiatives and programs, but also to introduce ourselves formally in a public setting to the new commissioners that are on and new employees or anyone else that's affiliated with the county. As I believe the last time we came and presented before this body was in July, I think. Just before he went on vacation. Was back in July, so good opportunity while it's nice and cold out to come and reintroduce ourselves and give everyone an update.
Fire away.
So for those who are not aware of our organization, or a nonprofit regional economic development organization, our service area covers about 40 communities.
Oh, Jesus.
Gotta say, no, there's a staircase down there.
I just keep going.
Yeah, don't mind the woman underneath the table.
Any movie from me.
Let's just keep going. Remember, this is recorded.
Oh, yeah.
But we
Want a drink?
Oh, IT, okay. But our service area covers all Cheshire County and parts of Western Hillsborough County, so our territory goes about as far as Milford and up to the town of Hillsborough and everything west, although we do have some programming that goes statewide. The core business of what we do is to help grow the regional economy, so those may know, or we're best known for our work with our real estate development projects, this building being one of them, the Heatbridge Hall, Keene Public Library expansion a few years ago, that was another one, Benson Wood Manufacturing, the railroad land development in downtown Keene, and so on. So the main programs, the main things that we have been up to as of late have focused on a few core areas, traditional business expansion, and helping businesses be able to access capital and get what they need in order to help their business grow to the next level. So there are a couple announcements that we'll be making probably in the next couple weeks on one deal that we just closed with an area business that will help them expand. And that's one of our legacy programs. It's one that continuously goes on. We work with companies to help them with business planning, financial packaging, things of that sort. But our biggest updates come from some of our newer programs. They relate to housing, they relate to childcare, and they relate to environmental remediation. So on the environmental program, that is an EPA-funded brownfields program. So what that does is it provides funding to clean contaminated industrial sites, so think abandoned factories, gas stations, laundromats, things that have chemicals in the ground, pollutants in the ground that need to be taken out of the ground before new stuff can go in a nutshell. So our board recently voted to approve a grant request for a community within the county. A formal announcement will be going out in March, hopefully in March, when some of the EPA side of the paperwork is all squared away. But we're excited to announce when the time comes a site that we'll be participating on through our funding for a local project here, which is very exciting. And there's a couple others that we're working on getting to that point to where we can make formal funding decisions on it. So it's exciting to see that program up and going. We've been working on it for a couple of years now in partnership with Southwest Region Planning Commission and many municipalities throughout the region. We are looking at expanding that program through supplemental funding from the EPA next month, assuming that there are no other hiccups at the federal level. However, I think as we all know in the past few weeks that happens to be a week-by-week proposition. So hopefully, there isn't too much uncertainty, but if all goes according to plan, we'll be able to get more money for that program, which will allow for more remediation of old factories and gas stations and things like that. Another program with for a hot topic is housing. That's a very important topic right now in public policy. We have developed, we've done housing by accident historically, just through the development of buildings. 51 Railroad Street in Keene, where the Richards Group is, for instance. That was a commercial mixed-use property that we developed where we threw I think a dozen condos up in the top floor. But the kind of primary intent was the commercial aspect of it. So last year, over the past couple of years, we made a strategic decision to get involved in the housing issue because it relates back to everything else that we're doing. If we don't have the workforce, we can't get the businesses here, we can't help the businesses grow if they can't find the workers, and so on and so forth. So that led us to working with a couple of local groups to create a regional housing development fund that can provide gap funding for developers that want to do housing projects. Last year, we helped close on a 57-unit apartment building right here in Keene using some of our capital, so we were able to provide some gap funding for that. And then we also did another project in Cheshire that resulted in a residential addition to an existing business that helped a family relocate. So they're able to sell their home here in Keene, move down to Cheshire, so that did create an additional unit, and now they're living on site with a business. With the housing program, we're working with area businesses that are interested in investing, and we have a number that are lined up. The city of Keene provided us some funding through their 2025 budget to help kickstart and capitalize the budget, which was a good step in the right direction. But the reason for creating that regional housing fund is because not to get too wonky in this forum, but if you are developing housing projects and you have maybe a smaller there are a lot of instances where a bank will not be able to lend money to a housing project in very particular circumstances, or there aren't many government programs that would be available to help cover the last 10% of what a project needs to get all their financing packaging together. So that's where we're focused on, is coming in with that last 10% or so and helping a project get across the finish line. Just to keep the number of units, keep the materials, keep the quality, and be able to make a project go. That's what we did with the project, the 57 units we mentioned earlier. That's traditionally the type of financing that we do across all of our programs. But good news is the housing program is been officially capitalized, and we're hearing some good things out of Concord through the Housing Champions program. That's the result of some of the advocacy that we've been doing over the past couple of years, bringing attention to this issue. So we are excited to work with municipalities and work with developers to increase access to capital for housing projects. Another high-profile program that also relates to this is childcare. We have a home renovation program for families that want to rent daycares from their home. And over the past few months, we've added some sophistication to our team, and we've had some personnel changes and got some new partners involved. We recently partnered with an organization called New Hampshire Child Care Aware that is a statewide entity that is proficient with licensure assistance and helping the professional development best practices, for lack of a better term, the child caring part of the business. Whereas our expertise is more on the business side, how to figure out the facility expansion component, the business planning part. That's where we work with Small Business Development Center and other entities that do that, and through our services themselves. But we also brought on an additional zoning consultant that is helping providers navigate local zoning regulations. We have one provider in New Ipswich right now that we're being pretty heavy-handed with, that is running into those zoning issues that our consultant is helping them kind of navigate just the various nuances in relation to like new legislation that's coming out on childcare and helping curtail the negative effects of local politics sometimes. That can happen with businesses. It happens in every community in some way, shape, or form. And we're also working on bringing on another member to the team that can serve as a local point of an additional local point of contact. And we're working on, we're hoping this spring to make announcements and close our first couple expansion projects. We're getting pretty close with a couple of providers. We have providers that are interested in getting like fencing for their backyards, handrails. One of them is looking for to wall off their boiler in their basement because they run their childcare program in their basement, just to keep the kids safe. So we're working with Concord on navigating the kind of funding requirements for the funding that we have, the state tax credits that we have, while meeting the needs of the providers and kind of being the first ones in the state to do it. So it's been a fun journey to learn how to do that, but over the past few months we've really taken our time to slow the program down, identify a new team, and add some sophistication to the training components and licensure assistance components of our program, which is very exciting. So the work that we do, as many of you know, the work that we do is a lot of it's behind the scenes, negotiating with property owners, with businesses, with banks, getting people to spend money and to make investments, whether it be a government agency, whether it be a business, trying to convince people to sell things, trying to convince people to buy things. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the nexus of what we do. So a lot of the work that we do is kind of behind the scenes. That's why we like to take opportunities like this to come and inform public bodies of some of the work that we're doing, and just let people know what's going on in the region, and how much is progressing on some of these key issues. So we're excited to work with the county and with others in the year ahead. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of partnership opportunities that we'll have to be able to further mutual interests that both us and the county have. But with that, I know I'm derailing the agenda a little bit, seeing how quickly we got through the first part of it. But with that, I can open it up for any questions if anyone would like to. Questions, comments, concerns?
Would you have any kind of update on the Kingsbury property or the Troy Mill?
So we have not been involved in I have not been involved in the Troy Mills property. That one was acquired. Eric Ferris bought that one before I came on board, and they didn't really, from what I knew, I'm aware of at least, they didn't really need it was a project that we didn't really need to participate in. We did own the property at one point, like 20 some odd years ago, but I'm not sure what the situation is there now. I know there's some water.
I can actually tell you that because of the Water Commission, not the Select Board, but then they're very clear on that, but the Water Commission, there is a lawsuit pending, and that's where things pretty much lie, is that they built out at first, I think 27 units, and they're just waiting, and I don't know what the issue,
It's all about hookups.
And it's just like.
And power between the Water Commission and the Board of Selectmen. Who will decide how many hookups are gonna be one of those?
Yeah,
All right.
and the impact it would have to the town with the increase in taxes, the increase it would have with people coming into the town and being able to live there, it'd be a major impact. So I think if you talk to them, the select board, they're a little frustrated by all of it, but it's out of their hands. So.
Kingsbury property?
No, I've heard a little bit of chatter, but that's, there's always a little bit of chatter going on relating to it. But one thing I did want to add on just about organization itself. We are we are in the process of expanding our board, and we're looking at a strategic plan, or planning on doing a strategic planning process this year, as we are we went through a transition of a business model, or kind of recalibrating of a business model a couple of years ago. So we are, the strategic planning process will help us identify the governance and operational structures and kind of the strategic direction that we'll need in order to help best serve the needs of the region and communities. Through these programs, we have found new ways to engage municipalities. So, like
The little history for you all is that about 4 years ago now, the way that Medic used to, they used to have big projects. Blackbrook in Keene is a Medic project. And like he said, the Railroad Street project is a Medic project. And without them, we wouldn't have that. And if you go outside of the city, there's projects too that have been able to come to fruition. And Gilsum, I think I know they had a little bit of a hand in Badger.
Yep.
And so they've been a huge force in this area. Jack Dugan was the predecessor, and they just got to a point where those big projects weren't happening anymore, and so they had to go through this readjustment. During that time, the commissioners at that point, we were able to help support them through the American Rescue Plan funding to reorganize, and what they come out with is a model that's helping across the board. The childcare thing, it's huge because we have a workforce need, and if people can't find childcare, and it's really hard, especially infant, then they're not going to work, they're staying home. And so it's been, to be able to license people, get people, help them find the house get up to the point where it needs to be, it's been huge. So it's a step in the right direction, and so we hope those type of things continue. You still look at, though, like the old drive-in. Is there things that we're looking at, that possibility down there?
There are.
The old drive-in in Keene.
Yeah, we presented on that last month.
So there are a lot of different projects throughout the county, throughout the region, that we're looking at. We get asked whether by municipalities, we get asked by nonprofits, by businesses. A lot of times what will happen is, in the case of Bensonwood, we own the production Ave, the old Smith's Medical Factory, over by the Volkswagen dealership. We owned that from 2017 until June of last year. So what will happen is, like, someone like Ted Benson will come to us, or we'll approach them. They'll be looking for industrial space, and we will do the finding. We'll be the developer, and we'll acquire the property, fix it up, do a master lease back for as long as the feds say we have to, per the grants and tax credits that we use, and then we sell the property back to the business for what's owed on it. And then we wipe our hands clean of it, we get made whole and don't make a profit on it, and we move on to the next one, and move on to the next one. And that is a model. When construction costs were lower, the need for unemployment was much higher, and workforce was not as big of an issue. We were able to run on a model that really focused on that. Whereas now, with steel and lumber about to cost 25% more, 7% interest rates, 7-8% interest rates, it's becoming very hard for construction projects to pencil out, to be financially viable. So, and as the needs of the economy have shifted, we've also needed to modernize. Just like a business has to adjust to the market conditions, and nonprofits are not immune to that. We have to as well. So our strategic planning process, as we've brought on these new initiatives that have helped us regain stability, a fine level of financial stability, to the point where we're actually growing now. We're hiring for an additional full-time position now, and we expect to be hiring an additional person later this year. So we're at a growth point right now. So managing kind of our legacy programs, our new initiatives, but also maintaining that development capacity, where if a company leaves a town, if Millipore leaves, I don't wanna say that, but point being, or let's say Teleflex.
Why not Smith? Or whatever it's called today.
Yeah, so a
It's
company
changed so
would,
many times.
Well, it's
So let's
not gonna be
say-
called anything here soon.
Right, it's leaving.
Okay.
so we would have, what this, direction allows us to do is to be able to maintain operations while being able to take the big risks simultaneously. And if one big risk does not pan out, then we're not in a precarious position kind of from a business model standpoint. Things just move on. And also for succession planning purposes, if I get abducted by aliens, then we can continue to
Somebody can step in.
Exactly, you could take my job.
So the
Well,
other,
maybe you can get funding from that.
From the aliens?
Yeah, yeah.
They got moon rocks, those aren't cheap.
the other thing is that what we found with Blackbrook is that a lot of, especially in Vermont, a lot of companies that are growing want to come over to the New Hampshire side. There's environmental issues that they have to fight with the state. There's no income tax here. Building like that will, building like Smith Medical will be something that somebody may want to say, you know what, and it's got a clean room, which in this day and age costs a lot of money, and it's a really important thing in a company where if you're doing certain things, you have to have government standards say, a clean room, which costs millions of dollars to build. So it's an opportunity for that. The other thing I wanted to point out is, last night at the Southwest Regional Planning Commission's meeting that they had, I was talking to Winchester, and they've got 3 companies, and they actually said that you've helped them, 3 companies breaking ground this year in their industrial park, and 2 of them are outside of Winchester. One is a growth within. Sweetwater has grown out of its space, the distillery, and they're wanting to build a building down there and then have still have the Main Street thing, but they can't get enough of it out the door. So they need to build a building that can allow them to have that opportunity. So that's exciting. In Winchester, the industrial park is starting to get filled up. This is something that we've been talking about for years. And so it's good. It's a great thing. And then the other thing is, just there's EDCs throughout. Medic is one of many throughout the state of New Hampshire, correct?
Yeah, we're one of 9 regional ones, and a lot of smaller towns will have their own, so.
Right. Swansea and others.
Yep, and so a lot of towns have their own town committees, so like we correspond with Fitzwilliam, with Swansea's, with Keens, and there are 2 other nonprofits, Hinsdale and Winchester, that are their own independent, non-government affiliated organizations.
Yeah, and so the thing for us is a few years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a discussion that maybe the county should have an economic development person in-house. So we went through that process, we looked at it. At the end of the day, my thing is, it's more about what do we have in the community already? And what we identified is when it comes to planning, Southwest Regional Planning Commission and policy, they're there for you. They'll work with you on those issues. When it comes to marketing the community, the Greater Monadnock Collaborative or the Chamber is something. And then when it comes to really working with businesses, hand in hand, walking with them, getting them here, selling the product of the land that we have, then it's Monadnock Economic Development Corporation. So we had it in the community already, so we didn't have to build something, I felt, and the commissioners at that point agreed, and it's been a good partnership that we've had, and we actually have had Cody go with us to Washington DC. I think those relationships have benefited Medic because you've been able to get certain things from Senator Sheen and others that I think, because they know who you are, it helps too. We have to yell over here at the corner, in this corner of the state, to make sure people remember that we're here. So
I was having a conversation in Concord yesterday for one of the boards I'm on, and they were talking about serving underserved areas in the context of rural, and everyone remember, I say this tongue-in-cheek as I'm a North Country native, but everyone remembers that the North Country is forgotten. Mm-hmm. And I always think of that famous moment from the debate that Gene Sheen and Scott Brown had in, I think, 2014, where I think James Findall was asking about something about, it was either in Cheshire County or Sullivan County, and Scott Brown said, oh yeah, the North Country. Where? And that's just that's a synopsis of how, unfortunately, a lot of policymakers in Concord and occasionally in Washington think sometimes. And it's our job, Chris, it's our job and planning committee and everyone else to make sure that this corner of New Hampshire is not just a block that votes one way generally in elections, but has a lot of industry here, has needs, and is as deserving as Manchester, Portsmouth, or anywhere else in the state.
So, that's it, unless you have questions. Okay. This is our continued effort to try to make you aware of things that are going on so that you just have that history.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for having me, and I'm happy to, if anyone ever has any questions, or if there's a community or a business in any of the communities that you represent that needs something, feel free to reach out to me directly. I can send Davis my contact information and Chris to forward to you all, but happy to help wherever we're needed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, master agenda item number 1241, Rail Trails update. Mike's here to receive updates on the ongoing work of the Monadnock Region Rail Trails Collaborative. So the screen should be shareable. Yeah. So
Starting to share.
there you go.
Good. All right, great, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Mike Kowalczyk. I'm founder and president of the Monadnock Region Rail Trail Collaborative. What I'm showing today is going to be a little bit of repeat, some for Chris and Terry. Of course, Suzanne knows everything that's going on. But I thought I'd give a little bit of background, but I also have some updates too as well, okay? All right, so our collaborative, we're made up of a group of reps from around the region. We're nonprofits, snowmobile clubs, volunteers, et cetera. And we're all interested in improving the regional rail trails. And those rail trails are the Cheshire, Ashwelloch, Fort Hill, Monadnock, Hillsborough, and Peterborough. And we do have ways to connect with Winchton, Brattleboro, and Bellows Falls, which would expand the network quite a bit. So we do have a board, and it's made up of these folks. So Suzanne sits on it for the county, a person from City of Keene Snow Riders, Jaffrey, Monadnock Conservancy, Southwest Regional Planning Commission, Swansea, Walpole, Winchester, and we do have an attorney. Also, we're a 501c3 through the Bike Walk Alliance of New Hampshire, so we're an affiliate of them. And what that does, it reduces our costs. We don't have to worry about a lot of the accounting and that type of thing. They take care of that for us. So that frees us up to work on rail trail projects, which is what I do. If you're not familiar, this map here is what the railroads look like in our region. So you can see Keene's down here in the corner, and every black line was a rail line, and every little dot on a black line was a depot. So New Hampshire happens to be one of the most dense states in the country when it comes to railroads. So there's a lot of rail lines everywhere, which now have potential to be trails. Around the 60s, the railroad started to abandon a lot of these lines. And then in the 90s, the DOT bought about 334 miles of rail corridor. So in our region, the DOT owns almost all the property except for about a mile or a little more than a mile through Keene and a couple miles through Peterborough. Keene owns their part, Peterborough owns their section, but everything else is owned by the DOT. These are the trails. So the Cheshire Rail Trail runs from, again, Winchton up into potentially to Bellows Falls. That's 43 miles. The Ashwelloch Trail runs from Emerald Street in Keene over down in Hinsdale right up to the Connecticut River. And then the Fort Hill Trail runs along the Connecticut River up and potentially can get into Brattleboro. The Monadnock Trail, again, starts in Winchton and goes up into Jaffrey It would have gone into Peterborough, but there's a section there, you see the black line missing. That was not purchased by the state, and now it's all broken up and all privately owned. So we're in discussions on how we can make that link. Probably most likely will be side roads and things like that at the moment. And then there's the Peterborough-Hillsborough Trail, which runs from Peterborough all the way up into Hillsborough. There is a way to connect with Bellows Falls, and I say that because the connection really isn't there right now. You gotta get on Route 12, but there is a way to do that. Also down in Winchendon, there's a way to connect. In this case, it's two rail corridors, both about 2 miles, that are owned by CSX Railroad. It goes nowhere in both directions, but CSX is a property owner. And so I'm working with people in Winchendon and Massachusetts to try to figure out how to get the state or the town to purchase that property so we can make the connection.
In Bellows Falls, is that the Vilas Bridge?
Yeah, that's the bridge you would go over. And I think the best solution up there is put a protected bike lane or, walking lane next to Route 12. Because the rail corridor north of the Cold River is still active because there's a railroad maintenance station up there. They still use that line.
So there's nothing in between Walpole and there right now?
Right now, you just get on Route 12.
Yeah.
It just kind of dumps onto Route 12 without any protected lane. But there is plenty of space to put a protected lane. That would be a project of the DOT because they maintain Route 12. So. In Brattleboro, this is an interesting one. The Fort Hill Trail, as it approaches Brattleboro on the New Hampshire side, ends at a 900-foot railroad truss bridge, which is beautiful. It's two rail tracks wide. You could hold a wedding on the thing if you made it pedestrian. So I'm working with Southwest Regional Planning Commission to try to figure out how we can open that up. So we
Have you applied to the Northern Borders Timber?
Working with Todd Horner, the Timber for Transit, yes, I submitted with Todd on that grant. And the first part would be to inspect the bridge to see if it's safe for pedestrian use and maintenance equipment. That'd be the first step.
When's the last time that railroad bridge was used?
Last time,
Was that in the 60s or before?
I don't know. I heard Ashwelot Trail closed in the 80s.
Mhm.
Maybe people have been around it that long know that. I don't know when Fort Hill was shut down. But it'd be,
I've always known it to be there, but I'm not.
I think it
don't
would be
I've
a
ever
great
seen a
asset
trail
to the
that-
region,
a
right?
train there.
You'd have this pedestrian bridge over the river. You look north to see downtown Brattleboro, you look south to see the whole valley. I mean, I just think it would be great. People in Brattleboro aren't as excited because when you get over the river, you first come to their water treatment plant, which is fine, but then you start running into some potential right-of-way issues. One, the old rail bed merges with the Amtrak line, so now you'd have to have a section of railroad trail, and then you come to the oil company that's on the river there, and you'd have to get a right-of-way through their property, which they don't want to do, at least that's what I'm told. My approach is, well, let's get across the river, let's get up to the water treatment plant, put up a dead-end sign, and then see where it goes, right? I mean, you're not gonna get it done unless you keep going, right? So you got like bits and pieces at a time. Okay, so that's how the connections would be made. It's a total of 114 miles. And if you made those connections, you connect all these other trails. So it really expands the network. The biggest one is down to the Rare River Trail, which is in Winchendon. That could get to the Mass Central, and the Mass Central goes from Boston to Northampton. And then the Mass Central in Boston connects to the East Coast Greenway, which goes to the Florida Keys, right? So there's all this rail trail networking going on around the country to try to connect all this stuff. We could benefit hugely, right? We could be advertising in Boston, take a multi-day trip up into, southwest New Hampshire, that kind of thing. When I talked to the woman who's part of the Connecticut River Conservancy, and she saw this, she goes, oh, we could advertise at Grand Central, take the train right out of New York, get off in Brattleboro, boom, get on your bike and start biking in our region. So I think there's a lot of tourism opportunity here. We also are trying to provide other amenities like signage and hydration stations and repair stations and things like that, traffic counters and those types of things. Okay, so an update. This is gonna get a little messy after a while, but starting with, the county's been great helping us. Suzanne's been great writing grants. So there was one written, 22 to 24, there's a mile of trail in Surrey that goes through a granite cut for that mile. It's like nothing else in the state, right? And we did get that finished last year. So my tagline is the 6-year-old can ride a bike on it, the 6-year-old can now ride a bike on it. Where 2 years ago you couldn't get through there. So a lot of work, but it looks really good. And again, the money coming, through Suzanne and all the work she does to help us get the grants. Another one too, a couple years ago, this was private through Timken and Mascoma grant. We fixed a section in Troy south of the depot. Again, that got all fixed up and regraded and hard pack put down. Again, the 6-year-old can ride a bike on it. Up in Westmoreland, we're current.
Done at Troy, doesn't that connect with the, isn't there another trail that goes to?
There's a hiking trail. I think they now the whole thing's called the New England Hiking Trail. It starts in South Connecticut, goes up, comes through Troy, goes through Mount Monadnock, out to Mount Centipede, keeps going. That intersects in Troy, that hiking trail, yeah. We're currently executing an RTP grant in Westmoreland. Again, Suzanne wrote the grant for this. We did work last fall until the snows came. And when the snows come and the snowmobilers come out, we have to get off the trail. But we got a ton of work done. Got a lot of help from a couple folks. Jeff Watson, who lives up there, was a big help. And another guy, Gene Latourneau, who actually lives in Spofford, but I got his name through the Monadnock Cycling Club, and he was out there every day with us, helping us. It's 7.5 miles. We got almost all of it, the ditches cleared, the trees removed. We got a little bit more to do. Now we're gonna go back, get the grading done, the surface material down, that type of thing. So that's coming along really nicely. That should be done sometime this year.
And it looks great.
It's
the one I went on.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
From what it was, what I saw some pictures of, to what it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every one of these rail beds, you first get on one that hasn't been worked on in 40 years, and it's like a single track, single hiking trail, right? And most people say, oh my God, we'll never be able to, get a groomer through here or, be able to, I don't know, it's there, the railroad fit, right? We just gotta clear back the brush and clear back the trees and push it back, right?
In that section, in the 70s, they actually, beyond just taking the rails and the ties, they actually took the gravel and, right?
Some places the ballast was gone too.
Yeah.
Right.
If I remember that part, it was all sandy.
Yeah, there are,
muddy.
yep. Also the railroad, when they were pulling up the rails and ties they didn't want, they just tossed. And a lot of them are in the drainage ditches. Okay, now the drainage ditches don't work. Therefore the water ends up on the rail bed and it washes away the rail bed. So a lot of this is us getting those rail ties just out of the ditches, and we have to keep all this stuff on property. So we just put it off to the side. But it's managing water is like the biggest thing that you have to do here, so. Another one down here in Marlboro, as you can see, is also in process. We started this again in the fall. This is 2.5 miles in Marlboro, another RTP grant that Suzanne helped us write, which is great. Actually, this one, Suzanne worked with Ellen Smith from the town of Marlboro, so Ellen's actually now executing the grant, which, gives us more capacity to do more things, and we're trying to follow that model even more.
She's the town administrator in Marlboro.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of the tree clearing, not quite done. Should be done, again this spring. Oh, and by the way, with these RTP grants, which are a federal grant, we only can clear trees between November 1st and April 15th. Because the northern long-eared bat is now an endangered species, and they don't want us doing any tree removal while the bat is in our region. So apparently they migrate after November 1st, and they're out of the region, so we can go in and clear trees. So now, this finishing the Westmoreland and the Marlboro tree clearing, we gotta figure out how to do that before April 15th. If the snow sticks around, we're not allowed on the trail because of snowmobiles, so it's trying to juggle all this stuff to try to see if we can make it all happen. Hopefully we can pull it off. But this Marlboro project, again, should be done, again, by the end of the year. We've got, again, Suzanne wrote an RTP grant for, I call it North Troy. This is from the Troy Marlboro town line down to the Troy Depot. It's a little shorter, I think it's like 1 3/4 miles. We've got the Troy Conservation Commission involved with this one. Kyle Smith chairs that committee. I just was at one of their meetings like last week to give an update of where we are. But a similar thing, we gotta remove trees and clear ditches and, fix the trail surface and all that. This one we did a little different. We did not include the tree clearing. So what we're gonna do is I work with the Snow Moles, who's a snowmobile club that works this section of the rail bed. And we're gonna write what's called a grant and aid grant, because the snowmobile club is eligible to do that. And that's a state grant, it's not a federal grant. So because it's a state grant, we can use it to clear trees. So we're gonna use the GIA grant to clear trees, and we're gonna use the RTP grant to do everything else, right? And so the snowmobiles have agreed to do that, and that grant gets written in May, and we should have money in June or July to do that. So that opens up the months we can do all this tree removal, things like that.
Even though the bats are there?
Yeah, even though the bats are, somehow the bats must know, oh, this is a RTP grant one, so I can.
This is a state grant, we can't stay here.
It's just funny how those things work, And I actually got that advice from the person at the Bureau of Trails who manages the RTP grant.
Oh, that is hysterical.
Isn't it something?
No, it's consistent.
Next one is in Swansea. Suzanne worked with Stefan Mayhew, who's the planner for Swansea, in writing this RTP grant because it was Stefan's first go around. And this one is basically just putting down all the surface material. So this will be done sometime this year. And I've been working pretty closely with the Swansea DPW director, Joe DeRusso. And I called him one day and I said, Joe, you want to do the work? He goes, yeah, we'll do the work, which makes things a lot easier because now the grantee is actually doing their own work. So we don't have to get 3 quotes. We can, all his crew labor can go against the in-kind portion of the grant, any equipment he uses. It's just gonna make things really nice, so.
And the thing about, especially in Swansea, but it's happening in Westmoreland too, is happening everywhere, is that, that 100-year storm that happens every other Tuesday now, it's done real damage in Swansea.
Right.
It really took out at least 2, maybe 3 areas that really were severely damaged, with culverts that were just ripped apart, that got blocked up during the storm with a deluge of water.
Right, yeah, I think I talked about that here in a second.
Oh,
If I
sorry.
don't, I'll get back to you.
All right.
So
Don't wanna
remind
jump
me if I
ahead.
miss it.
All right, sorry.
So before I move on to the Fort Hill, so you can see I did all this stuff on the Cheshire Rail Trail, right? So at the end of this year, if everything goes as planned, the trail will be, the 6-year-old can ride a bike on it from the Westmoreland Walpole Town Line down to Rhododendron Road at Fitzwilliam. The only thing missing are the 2 bridges. The bridge that goes over 101 and the bridge that goes over Swansea Factory Road. And the city of Keene's working on those. They're focusing mostly on the 101 bridge right now. I'm trying to find a way to get the Swansea Factory Road bridge done while they're working on the 101 bridge. But it's literally 2 missing links to the chain, right? But other than that, we'll have a pretty good stretch of rail trail that will be really good shape. So it's coming along. So the Fort Hill, you can see in the lower left-hand corner here. So the collaborative, we have a subcommittee that works on projects, and one of them we agreed to write an RTP grant this year, thank you, Suzanne, is for Fort Hill. And the reason we picked this is there's a pretty active group there that's already doing work, and that's where I'd like to go, because then we have local people that are engaged, they want to make it work, you get a lot of volunteer help through labor, equipment, things like that, and that makes the project successful, right? It's also, if you haven't been on it, it's pretty scenic. I mean, it's right along the river, there's a boat launch, there's a causeway. Of course, you come up to this truss bridge, too bad we can't cross it yet, but you know, you see that. So there's gonna be a focus to try to get Fort Hill up to snuff, so the 6-year-old red bike on it. So that'll be written this spring. Execution would be next year, because RTP is a 2-year cycle. Also, with the help of Suzanne, there's a grant called American Trails. This is private, which got submitted. Have you heard back yet on it?
No, a little too soon, because
Yeah,
their
okay.
deadline just passed.
Okay. So on the Cheshire Rail Trail, there's one section that needs work. It's like 1.5 miles, and it's really not too bad. So this American Trails grant, which is a little under 10,000, we think could do the work to get that fixed. So Suzanne and I worked on this. Suzanne got it submitted, and hopefully if we get awarded, and typically private money comes a lot faster, we should be able to do that this year as well.
We also have hopes of turning it into an annual program. If it works out as well as we expect, we'll just
Go back to the well.
self-plagiarize annually,
Yes.
change a word here or there, and get another project done.
Walpole was awarded an RTP grant a couple years ago. They did a little bit of work. They're now doing what I call light maintenance. They're getting mowing done, which hadn't been done in the past. They did form a trail group, which is pretty active. Again, doing what I call light maintenance things, mowing, keeping a ditch clear that they'd already worked on, things like that. Perhaps someday in the future, we can get in there and finish Walpole all the way up to at least the Cold River, because there is a bridge missing at Cold River. That's another thing that would have to be done. So down in Fitzwilliam, snow moles do a lot of work down in Fitzwilliam. There's about 3 miles that need to be worked on. Monadnock Conservancy worked on the trail from the state line going north about 2.5 miles, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So now there's this gap from Rhododendron Road up to that point that we'll have to look at. So there's that gap. There's a bridge that we want to redeck called the Ashbrook Swamp Bridge this year. We believe the Swansea Rail Trail Advisory Committee can provide the funding to do that. Winchester, they use USDA because they're depressed, is that the right term?
Distressed.
What's that?
Distressed.
Distressed.
I don't know if they're depressed.
They're depressed about being distressed.
That might be the case.
They're eligible for USDA, and they've been successful with that. So when we get into Winchester, we might try to use USDA again because they're eligible for that. Snow moles, the Snow Riders, the Keene Snow Riders Snowmobile Club. We work very closely with them. Just a little bit about the washouts. There were 7 of them, as Chris mentioned, back in '23. The 2 most northern didn't actually go through the rail bed, but it compromised the rail bed. So the Snow Riders were able to get funding through an ARPA grant through the GIA to get those fixed. That did happen this spring, and they did redeck a bridge last year, which looks really nice. It's another one of these railroad truss bridges that goes over the Ashland River. Then there's the remaining washouts. It's a real story. There's 5. All of them go through the rail bed, so the rail bed's gone. 2 are pretty significant, and what I mean by that is 40, 50 feet wide and all the way down, 30, 40 feet down. So the status is the town of Swansea is working with the DOT to try to get these fixed. Swansea was awarded a TAP grant back in 2018 to fix all the trails in Swansea. Well, over time, the cost has gone up, And when these floods occurred, we said, well, can we rescope that grant to fix the washouts? And the DOT agreed, okay? The downside is you have to follow the TAP grant rules, which are a lot. And it requires a lot of things, like engineering, you gotta hire an engineering firm, you gotta do an engineering study, you gotta do a hydraulic study, you gotta do all these things, right? Which just takes a lot of time and needs a lot of money. So 4 of the 5 washouts are gonna be covered by this TAP grant. The engineering firm recently came back with their estimate of $1.7 million to fix them, right? The grant was originally $750,000. The question is, who's gonna make up the difference, and nobody knows. I talked to the town administrator, he goes, well, we don't know. The DOT might pick up the whole tab. They might pick up 80% of the 1.7. They might, so it's kind of a black box, right? But the other big washout, which is not included, Swansea's working to replace the Christian Hill Bridge. If you guys are familiar with that project, it's been shut down for traffic for, I guess, a bunch of years. And and this goes over the Ashwelot Rail Trail, they're gonna replace that bridge, but it's historic. So they were asked can we reuse it? And it was proposed, well, can we use it to fix this washout? So instead of a culvert, put in this bridge, which everybody agreed to. That's supposed to happen next year. We'll see, but that's kind of the plan for that one, right? So one washout might get fixed next year, the other 5 really don't know. Right? So the Swansea Rail Trail Committee decided, well, we're gonna buy some detour signs and detour people off the trail and on country roads so they know where to go. Because we see evidence that people are just going right through these things, right? Because
How wide is the right of way there? How far do they have to go out?
Oh, not very far. So if you're coming from the north, Terry, you come to the first one, there's actually a way to get off. It's actually an Eversource road, because Eversource uses the rail bed to do work. And it gets you onto Eaton Road, and it's like right there. And then you get on the Holbrook, and now you're going past the horse farms. It's actually a pretty nice ride. You go past all the horse farms and you get back on the trail. It's about 2.5 miles that will be detouring there. So, it just, from my perspective, it's frustrating.
Are they at risk of losing the TAP grant if they don't utilize the TAP grant?
I don't think so. I don't think so, Chris, because they're in active discussions about using that grant to fix this.
Okay.
To fix this.
Okay.
It's unfortunate. And I mentioned this truss bridge, and I'm working with Todd Orner and stuff using Timber for Transit to try to at least get the inspection done. When I look at it, it looks fine. I don't see any abutment issues. The thing looks really solid to me.
That's gonna have to be some kind of fences or something on that.
Oh, you have to put up railings and things like that. And typically what you do with these is, because this one's so wide, you don't even put people to the edge of the bridge, right? You burn them in the center with railings and stuff and keep them away, that type of thing. But personally, what I'd like to see is, make about a 20, 30-foot trail on the bridge, and then in the middle, make like a big platform with benches and place for people to hang out and stuff like that, right? And kind of make it a gathering place. I was on the Leahy, I think it's called the Leahy Trail in Florida last year, and they did exactly that. We come up to this bridge, and on the bridge, they created this big deck, right, where people would hang out and stuff like that. So it was really cool. Okay, and then I mentioned also it's called the Transportation Heritage Trail Project, which is what Keane's working on to put the bridge over 101 and the bridge over Swansea Factory Road. So that's actively being pursued.
So that's pretty much, the planning for that is pretty much all done. They just need to raise the money, right?
It's raising the money and getting the project done.
Because they have the bridge, both bridges.
They have
3, right?
Two.
Is that 3 bridges total?
2.
Just 2?
It's the old Island Street Bridge is going over Swansea Factory Road, and then
Yeah,
some,
Prowse Bridge.
Londonderry.
Yeah.
that huge.
It's called the
thing.
Prowse Bridge.
Yeah.
Get another historic bridge that the DOT wanted.
And how much money do they need? 4 million?
They're talking $4 million to do everything.
Yeah.
Which also upgrades to current pedestrian standards, the Stone Arch Bridge.
Yeah.
Because right now you
That's
can
the
walk right
third,
off.
that's the third bridge, Stone Arch Bridge.
Yeah, right now you can walk right off. In fact,
Well, the Stone Arch Bridge, they're doing that as part of, the DOT is doing that as part of a project that they have scheduled for next year.
No, they didn't. They didn't include it. So they did not include any Cheshire Rail Trail work with the.
Oh, no, I was talking, I thought you meant the bridge that goes right up by the coffee place.
No, the Stone Arch Bridge is
Oh, yeah.
on the Cheshire Rail Trail.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about the bridge that, right where Swansea Factory Road intersects with
Yes.
101 at the coffee bean place.
Yeah.
That's gonna be replaced, from what I understand.
Well, the Stone Arch Bridge doesn't need a
Actually,
whole
the
lot,
roundabout.
doesn't need a whole lot of work, it needs some abutment work.
I think it's mostly railings is
Yeah.
what they're putting up.
Yeah.
Things are pretty solid. Those granite bridges were amazing. Really amazing they did that. This slide here I show because it shows how these trails could be used for various different things. Daily commuting, that's what I did. I lived in West Keene when I moved here, and I used the Cheshire Rail Trail to bike to work every day because I worked at Markham, Homage. But you can see right along Route, because the Cheshire Trail follows Route 12, there's all these businesses right along Route 12, right? So people can easily get to and from these things. It also offers a lot for tourism, right? I was up at a Westmoreland snowmobile meeting the other day, and the Jingles Christmas shop is right down the hill from the trail. Stuart John's is right down the hill from the trail. There's Summit Winery is right across the street from the trail. You know, we can make all these tourist attractions, right? And this is just true with every one of them. And I'll get into a little bit later how we're gonna try to take advantage of this. Again, an idea from Susan.
Try to
So-
wean your dependents from grants.
So what's reconstruction mean? I think I touched on this a little bit. First, snowmobiles use mostly all these trails today, right? And historically, they would maintain them for snowmobiling. So what that means is, like the picture there, as you can see, that's perfectly fine for snowmobile because they're riding on a couple feet of snow, right? So if the drainage ditches aren't working, no big deal, right? They just want to keep the trees off the trail and the bridges open. But for biking and hiking and horseback riding and other things, the condition needs to be better, okay? Now, working with the snowmobile clubs, they're also changing their mindset on what the trail should look like. So they're helping to make it more of a standard that all these other users can use it, which is great, right? So we're kind of all helping each other here, which is really good. But basically, we need to get all the drainage ditches working, the culverts, get the trees and everything cut back so that we back to the 14-foot wide rail bed, put down a stone crush type surface, and then keep the thing mowed and the canopy pushed back and that type of stuff. There's a couple places where we've actually already got some gates put up because I've seen everything using trail cameras, from cars to trucks to Jeeps that ride on these trails. One thing I am noticing now that we're maintaining them more, less dumping is going on. When we started, we were pulling tires and mattresses and bags of garbage and refrigerators, and washer and dryer in one case, and all this stuff off these trails, and we're not really seeing a whole lot of that anymore. So I think that's helping that we're maintaining.
Do you see people living on the outskirts of the trails?
I haven't. The place I see most of the folks, and I think there are people that are staying at 100 Nights, is they're now hanging out on the Cheshire Rail Trail, like a little bit, I would call it east of Water Street. You know, they just, looks like that's where they kind of just hang out throughout the day.
Past American.
Yeah.
And behind the Walmart, right before the crossing, in the distance behind the trees, there's a small encampment there too.
Yeah, it's called the pond or the grove or
I
something
was
like
gonna
that.
say, it probably turns into a pond many
No,
times.
but there's something like that. Yeah, and that was one of the places in the paper that had, you know, like hundreds of thousands of
I
needles
think
and
that's
all
the
that.
one behind Antioch. not the one on Walmart,
Okay.
which is a Schwelot Trail, right
Okay.
before the pedestrian bridge that goes over 101.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a small encampment over there, but the one that made the paper was the one that was behind the paved part by Antioch, that goes behind Antioch. On the opposite side of the trail, there's a large area in there that's really swampy, but when it's dry, yeah, it's not so swampy. That was the area that had all the needles.
Benefits, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's economic benefits. Again, real estate values actually go up if you abut one of these rail trails. And again, increase tourism. And to me, if we get all these miles put together, now you're gonna get multi-day trips. I get brochures on this stuff all the time. One of them came from Wilderness Voyagers, and they do tours around the country, and they show everything, and New Hampshire was none. Right? And I'm like, holy crap, we have all this, you know? So if we get this stuff up to a condition, and then get that word out, I think we'll get people here doing these multi-day trips. And our advantage is, they could start in Keene and go, oh, we're gonna go 23 miles up to Bellows Falls and bike back. That's a day. All the way down to Winchendon and bike back, that's another day. Over to Brattleboro, back, that's another day, right? And they could do these down and backs and then hang out in the city during the night, you know, and lodge here, eat here, and all that kind of stuff, so. Transportation, you know, daily commuting. I used to do 5 miles. I think with the onslaught of the e-bike, I think that now could be 7 or 10. People could go farther. And, you know, 10 miles, Summit Winery to Keene's probably less than 10 miles, probably pretty close, right? So people could be that far out. Troy's definitely, Troy's like 7.5 miles to downtown Keene. People can be commuting that far. Of course, it encourages active living, which just improves health. Helps protect the wildlife, because I see these as linear parks. You know, they're like hundreds of miles of linear parks, right? That, you know, is protecting the environment, the wildlife, and we're helping actually with flooding and things like that by keeping all these ditches and culverts open and stuff like that. Maintenance, of course, is a big deal. The way I describe it is Mother Nature's out there 24/7 trying to undo what we're doing. You know, rain, trees, leaves, rodents, all these things, and we're trying to, you know, remove all that, right? Get rid of the leaves and get rid of the trees and keep the ditches open and stuff like that. And it's not a rake and a shovel, it's excavators and dump trucks and skid steers, and those kinds of equipment is what's needed to take care of it. There's different strategies. One that seems to be working is collaborative, snowmobile clubs, trail organizations, local DPWs, everybody working together. That's the model we're using in Swansea. That seems to be working pretty well. So I try to encourage that when I talk to different towns and things like that. And of course, these things you need to take into consideration is the equipment. If you own it, who owns it, where do you store it? Or you could use the rental approach. We've been doing a lot of rental. Right? You just rent for when you need it. It has its downsides too, but you don't have to worry about taking care of it. So.
We've had a lot of trouble with identifying funding that would be appropriate, but even when we find funding that's appropriate to purchase equipment, which really is the best long-term sustainable strategy, to own the equipment and the maintenance of the equipment spread over time, significantly lower than continuing to rent.
Right.
But the two barriers we come up against is what grant. It's ridiculously impossible to identify and then apply and then follow the rules that go with it. And even if we could overcome that, who owns the equipment? Is that a Cheshire County thing? And then whoever owns it, where do we put it? Where do we put it? And so those questions, we keep bumping up against a wall. One day we'll overcome that, but right now, owning and purchasing equipment with a grant is, at the moment, quite the hurdle.
Right, in terms of storage, we are looking at a site, Riley Conservation Area in Swansea. Right adjacent to it, there's a section that the town actually owns. It's not part of the conservation. So I've gone to the town with the Keene Snow Riders and said, hey, could we put a storage facility up here? They took a look at it and said, yeah, fine. They seem to be okay with it, right? So that's kind of a back burner project. Okay, now we gotta find funding to build this thing, you know, and then how do you start putting equipment into it? But that's right off of the Ashwell Rail Trail. It would be perfect for like the whole southern part of the Ashwell Rail Trail. We can help equipment for that. There's a whole bunch of potential funding resources. I don't want to give the impression these are slam dunks because they're not, and some of them have constraints that don't allow us to use them, which are unfortunate. But there are opportunities out there, and again, Suzanne's very good at going through all this stuff to try to figure out what works and what doesn't. Almost all of them require some sort of a match, and so that can come in all these different forms, whether it's a municipality helping out, volunteer, in kind, private, you know, like a private trust or something to help pick up the match, that type of thing. This is my goal, to make one of these one day, right? One of these infographics, right? It says, here's what these trails mean. The one on the left is the Erie Canal in New York, which goes from Buffalo to Albany, right? So they're claiming $253 million in annual economic impact. The thing that's kind of interesting about this one, there's a trail tour group in New Hampshire. It's called the Great American Bike Tours, that does a tour of this Erie Canal. So they all get in a van and a bus in Londonderry and they ride out to Buffalo and then they bike all the way back to Albany and they take care of all the accommodations. And I know at least one person that's done that 6 or 7 times, right? So they're actually taking people out of the state, right? They go to New York. No, I want to stay here. In fact, I want people in New York to come here, right? Kind of thing. The one on the right is what's called the Greater Allegheny Passage. This is Pittsburgh down to Maryland. And then in Maryland, it hooks up with a canal path, the C&O. Can't remember what that means. It goes to Washington. So people have done this one where they park their truck in Pittsburgh and they bike all the way to Washington, D.C. Again, they're claiming millions of dollars in economic impact. So hopefully one day we can write one. Okay, so one thing I want to mention, this is new, is we're working on this thing called the Monadnock Rail Trail Challenge, an idea from Suzanne. And the collaborative, we had discussions on how do we start raising more money, right? And this was one idea, right? So basically the challenge is to get people that love rail trails to traverse our 114 miles in our region, right? It's a challenge to do that. And the objective is to increase the awareness of our network in our region, do fundraising and boost the local economy. Okay, that's what we're trying to do with it. And we're doing this in collaboration with the Greater Monadnock Collaborative. So basically the GMC is covering the cost to run the program. Okay, and it's through this third-party company called Bang Wango. And what they do is they do what they call passports for cities to do all kinds of tours. So Julie at the Greater Monadnock Collaborative, when she saw this, she goes, oh my God, we're not just going to do your rail trail challenge, we're going to do the wine tour, we're going to do the pizza place tour, we're going to do the art tour, we're going to do this, you know, so she sees it as a way of marketing the region through this mechanism, right? So we're working very closely with her to get this thing up and running. So how it works is a person would register, we're looking at a $30 fee, and that fee would pretty much cover their reward for finishing the challenge. And we're looking at t-shirts and patches and hats and that kind of thing, right? I'll show you a little example of what that's looking like. And once they register, they'll get access to the challenge, which is going to be on their phone. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And on their phone, they'll be able to traverse all the trails. And the users are required to check in at sponsored businesses. So Terry, you want to start doing the Cheshire North, you could say, here's where I am and I want to do that. The first stop is Ted's downtown. You go in and there'll be a sign there where you check in, you scan a barcode and it says you've checked in. but we've pulled you into TEDS, right? So now that business has an opportunity, right? Because we pulled that person in. Now we're asking the business to sponsor, we're asking $250 a business to sponsor us, right? And then we've talked to TEDS, we talked to Prime Roast, Summit Winery, the owner of Barn and Thistle, and they felt 250 was probably a good number to start, right? That they'd be willing to do. Interestingly, they saw it as a donation. I saw it as a marketing opportunity, right? Because we're gonna be basically advertising their company on this challenge for a whole year, because the challenge is over a whole year. But they saw it more as a donation. Trying to get 30 businesses to do this, and upon completing the 30 business check-in, the user can go get access to a rewards store where they can claim their products. And all of that will be done third party. We won't have to handle any inventory, it's all on-demand ordering, that kind of thing. So if you can bear with me a second, I'll show you what this looks like if you're, let me just stop sharing. Up here. And I'll start sharing again. There we go. Okay, so this is what you register and check in, this is what it will potentially look like on your screen, on your phone. And here's like all the businesses that we have listed. If, again, you want to do a certain trail, there's filters, and a person could say, I want to do the Cheshire Rail Trail North, and now it gives you the businesses along there. If I say sort near to me, it'll give me an order from here, right? So Beast Teas, Ted's, Jenna's Market, Elm City Brewery, Stonewall, Stewart John's, etc., right? So if I want to go to Stewart John's, I click on them, and here comes up, their site. And if I do the map, it should show me here's where they're located. And if I do directions, it'll give me directions to get there. It'll put me on the Cheshire Rail Trail. So this is the Cheshire Rail Trail. Take me up to Stewart and John's.
Start of the road.
Right? So it puts me on the trail, how to get there, and then once.
Okay, so does Google have an engine for that, or how do you do that?
This is actually Google Maps.
And it goes along the trail?
Yeah, because I clicked here, I clicked the biker.
Pick your mode of
I
transportation.
got you.
If you wanted to walk it, it'd show you too.
Yeah, if you walk it, I would assume it would put you on the same trail, which it does. Actually, it took you a little different route. Maybe it's a little shorter, I don't know.
Can we fly?
And that's an interesting comment, because, in the end, this is kind of an honor system.
Right.
Nothing prevents Chris from driving from business to business, checking in, right?
But it
Okay, I
still
want the
brings you
t-shirt.
to the business. It
But it
doesn't
brings you to
really
the
matter
business.
how he got there, the business is gonna get somebody in the door.
And because it's a personal challenge, they're
Right.
doing it because they want to, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how it works, right? And then when you get there, let's see if I can show you that. Let's see, that's what that looks like. So when you get there, let me see, I didn't do the order I wanted. I'm gonna skip ahead here. This is what, it will look something like this, a sign inside the business, right? And the person can go up and they scan that upper QR code and they're checked in. And the system say, yep, you checked in, in this case, A1 Pizza, right? And now you're checked off.
Is there and will it show if there's a benefit to that, like a 10% discount?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so there's a couple things. One, we're thinking every check-in's worth 100 points towards rewards.
Mm-hmm.
So they're earning points. But the businesses themselves can then offer whatever they want.
Yeah.
They could offer coupons, they could offer whatever incentive they can offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff's wife, who owns Barn and Thistle in Westmoreland, I was showing her, she loved it. I go, but wait a minute, Kathy, you're 5 miles off the trail.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, I don't care. She goes, I'll offer them discounts and coupons, and when they're done with their ride, they can drive over here and we can, you know. So she, even though she's not like on the trail, she was still interested. And then if a person goes into A1 Pizza and says, what's this all about? Oh, well, if you want to join, then they can click the lower barcode and they can, boom, join up, kind of thing. And as you can see, I put inspired by Cheshire County because of the idea.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so let me go back a little bit because I skipped ahead. So what do you offer? Well, we're thinking t-shirts, and this would be what we're thinking for a black t-shirt. So on the left is what would be on the front, and on the right is what would be on the back, right? And you can see at the top, we have the county, the collaborative, and Greater Monadnock Collaborative. At the like very top, you know, I'm thinking, picturing like right up here. And then below that are all the company sponsors, right? Kind of like you see on the floor type t-shirt.
Yeah.
This is what it would look like on a white t-shirt, and this is like a simulation of what it would actually look on a white t-shirt.
Cool.
But then we're thinking hats, patches, and what I'm gonna try to structure it so that the $30 that they pay for registration would cover these costs, and they can get a few things, like a t-shirt, a hat, a patch. You know, they feel like they walked away with more than one thing.
You're swagging it is what you're saying.
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
But then if they wanna order more, they could always order more and pay for it. So if
For
the county
people,
wants
though-
to have anything on the store, we can do that. Right? If you wanted to add anything on the store, we could.
Put keychains, county keychains.
Yes,
I would add to this that
Keychains, huh? To sell.
for people who
Order
complete
5,000
these challenges,
keychains.
it's not just swag. Like, you could think of swag as a promotional thing, but as somebody who's done things like this before, I treasure those t-shirts to the end of all time. And they can have holes and stains and I'll still love it. And those logos will live on forever. And for people who do the challenge, it's more than swag. And I think that demonstration is a sale to the businesses too.
And at the end of the first year, we'll have data. So I can go back to those businesses and say, oh, this challenge brought in X number of people into your business. You know, when I talked to Ted and I said, you know, Ted, what do you think? What would you be willing to contribute as a sponsor? He goes, I look at it as $1 a click. Every person you bring in my place, I'll give you $1. Right? That's kind of his guideline. Right? I said, okay, I'll be back in a year and tell you how many clicks. Right?
So you want me to go on, if you want me to go on and just.
Exactly. What is
Yeah, we'll have a meeting first.
Well, it's check-ins at his business.
That's okay.
You can only check in once.
Okay.
But if we all check in once.
Exactly. So when are you launching this?
Our goal is April 1st. Julie just is actually in the process of signing the contract with this company called Bangwango. And Gabby's the woman I'm working with there, and she's been fantastic getting this thing up and running. So that's why I've been trying to get ready with what's in the store, what the signs look like. I think the next biggest hurdle is going to be going to every business and getting them to sponsor.
And we're not gonna have snow on April 1st, right?
Well, if we do, people can hike it, or snowshoe.
Snowshoe, yeah.
There you go.
Any way they
Yeah.
cross-country
Yeah.
ski it.
Take your yak
To be honest
tracks
with
and
you,
get on the trail.
The biggest holdup that we've, from the Greater Monadnock Collaborative is that, because I'm the board chair, is Northern Borders is the grant we're using for funding a lot of this stuff. And we weren't sure when they did the freeze what that meant. We've now got clarity on that, so we're able to start moving forward. And literally 2 days this morning is, I signed off saying, let's move forward.
Yeah, great.
Well, on many things, but that was one of them, I think.
Okay, so that's what that looks like. Talk about this. Oh, one thing, last thing I want to mention, I think it's the last thing. There's a Senate bill, 274, I actually testified yesterday for this. And this is it's phase 1 in implementing the New Hampshire State Rail Trail Plan, which was updated in '22. And That bill involves transferring 4 rail beds from DOT to the Bureau of Trails. And Cheshire Rail Trail is one of them. So what that means is DOT's requirements to fix a trail is way higher than the Bureau of Trails, because they look at it as a transportation corridor, and the Bureau of Trails looks at it as a recreational corridor. So we think it'll ease up our requirements of what we need to do. And I believe, because part of this is also providing some staff for Bureau of Trails, we'll get better support from them on that. Right now, the DOT, and Shelley Winters has admitted it, DOT has no funding for these. They don't plan to have any, they don't have any support, they don't have any resources, right?
So is this the whole trail or just a section of it?
This is the entire Cheshire Rail Trail as part of this bill. And then you can see the other 3, Presidential, Pondicherry, Amanuset, and New Littleton. That's actually pieces of trail that make up the Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail, which is up in the Presidentials that runs from Maine to Vermont, right? So it's helping to piece that together. So they're basically helping us with our section, and they're helping this Cross New Hampshire Adventure Trail. And these 4 trails were suggested by the DOT. So basically it's got their blessing, which is good.
And in other words, it's recognizing that that those 4 trails have people that are dedicated to doing, and they can see that the work that we've done.
I think, they're not saying that, but I think that's really what's behind it.
I do. Yeah. No doubt.
So there's also funding in there to actually do trail work, but the trail work funding would be the current model, federal grant, and then matching, but we're asking that the state cover 10% of the match. So that'll help places and towns that can't even afford the match. So that was the idea behind that. It also increases the Bureau of Trail capacity. They're going to add 3 people, 2 in the field. One of them should be assigned to our region. Okay. And it also adds fish and game capacity because they're the ones to do law enforcement on the trails. So we should be able to get better support from them as well. And then we put in an emergency fund, which I know Chris, you were for this. We put in $1 million for emergency repair fund. So when disasters occur, like we have on the Ashwela Trail, there's a fund there that we can go to help fix them, right? And the Bureau of Trails would be responsible for managing that fund. It doesn't cover just these 4 trails, it's any recreational trail around the state, and it's any disaster that's happened in the past, current, or in the future. And if it's not used in a year, which would be unlikely for the next several years because there's so much it could roll over. Right? So this was heard yesterday by the Senate Transportation Committee. Several of us testified. Craig Rennie was there from the Bureau of Trails. Shelley Winters was there from the DOT. She confirmed, yes, we want to transfer these trails. We're in support of this. She just said, because they still do have ownership of recreational trails, if a disaster occurs, they would want access to some of the emergency fund. The way we wrote it in the bill is go ask the DOT for it, or the Bureau of Trails for it, and you can get it, right? Kind of thing. What we don't want is the DOT taking some of the money, right? Just say, oh, well, we want to have an emergency fund, so if an emergency occurs, we have it. We prefer that they, oh, we have a disaster, go to the Bureau of Trails to request the disaster fixed. All in all, I mean, the chair of the committee said, I love this bill, I think it's great. Funding's going to be difficult because of the current environment of the whole state and funding. So Donovan Fenton's our sponsor. He's been great. And he said, well, it could go a bunch of different ways. He goes, he thinks it'll pass, but it might pass with no funding. He goes, that's not as bad as it sounds. Because what it means is if you can find the funding, you can continue to move forward. And I would assume it also means the 4 trails transfer no matter what, because that's no cost, right? It could be passed with some funding, like a little bit, to at least get us started. It was very unlikely the whole thing with all the funding would pass. They just don't think that that's going to happen. So anyway, so that's that. Any questions on that? Well, that's pretty much it. So this is just my wrap-up slide that we're kind of piecing this whole thing together, my little puzzle of everything that we've got to do to make it happen, funding, work with municipalities. We don't really have much right-of-way issues. There's a couple places where the abutter thinks they own the property and the DOT says they own the property, but it's only like 1 or 2 places, so it's not really a big deal. We do work with all the agencies. We've got maintenance actually going along, that's actually coming along fairly well. Got our teams in each of our regions, we know what it costs to do it. We've been able to get matching funds, and now we're gonna start our marketing and communications with our Rail Trail Challenge. And part of the Greater Monadnock Collaborative is Julie's hoping that she can then market the thing, right, through the Greater Monadnock Collaborative, right? Get out New England, maybe New York, you know, whatever her range is, right, that could draw people.
Take advantage of our small economic engines. You know, not our industries and all that, but getting people here for the arts, getting people here on our rail trails. That's something that we have to continually do to make sure. Because the other side of this is a lot of people that come up here for the first time, they take the ride and they say, this is a gorgeous place, I love the atmosphere, I love the area.
How many times a year that they
and they end up moving here.
Yeah.
And we gotta do whatever we can on all fronts to create tourism, to create people coming through and having an opportunity to sell the product of us.
Right. I get that all the time. When I'm working on the trail, people go by. I met 2 people recently. This guy was biking back for first time, hi. Second time, a little, finally stops. Okay, how's all this work? Turns out him and his wife, in fact, he worked for the railroad for like 40 years. They've been all over the country. And they do a lot of rail trail riding. And he said, we moved here because of this. And now they're helping us. They're doing Facebook posts for us of work that we're doing and things like that, right?
All right, and the other thing that the Monadnock Collaborative, the Greater Monadnock Collaborative with the Chamber can do is that they can bring influencers in. I hate the word, I hate the whole idea of it, but it works.
Yeah.
It works. These people we've already done it on some other things, and these people have like 300,000 people on them, and they walk the thing. They had one guy that came in and climbed Mount Monadnock, and went to some restaurants afterwards, but he tells everything, and all of a sudden you see others and you can follow it. You can actually see that it's working. And so the same thing here is they'll bring influencers in to bike the trails and they'll tell their story, and that will get other people here, and it's just how it goes. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and people are making millions of dollars being influencers. I'm trying to think, all right, is there like an old man influencer that I could do? So.
My thinking, one thing I'm thinking of doing is when we get challenge up and running and it's operating and it seems to be going okay, get a hold of the New Hampshire Chronicle and Boston Chronicle.
Yeah.
See if we can get a story here on it.
Yeah.
You can put a Cheshire County team to ride the challenge, starting with you.
Well, you could have a kick,
You'll be right behind me, right?
Oh, no!
I thought.
I mean, that's not
They don't let motor vehicles on there, right?
Here you are. I actually do have a bicycle.
I do too. I actually ride it to work.
Oh, good.
I mean, we could have a kickoff event of the whole thing too. Like May is bike month, so we could hold a challenge kickoff event, advertise it and then do a section, right, kind of thing. People would learn how to check in, and all that.
Well, that would be
That would be
smart.
cool. Yeah.
So that's what we thought.
That would be very good.
I'd like to be able to ride all the way out to Outlaw Brewery and back and stop at Sweetwater.
Not so
Let's see if you
not
can
so much
back.
All
back.
right.
Honey, can you drive the truck?
We have
We'll
a
put the
support
bike in the back.
vehicle, exactly, we need a support
So here's
vehicle.
another good story.
Kind of
So I was
really
on,
that little rolling thing that you can lean
Segway.
Oh, that's right.
You need a Segway.
so I was on the trail in Swansea, the Cheshire Trail, near the Swansea-Keentown line once, and I think it was 3 or 4 women went by. And I was doing a little bit of work, so then I caught up to them and I started talking to one of them. I said, where are you guys headed? Oh, we're going to Granite Roots. I go, really? Yeah. I said, the brewery? I said, where are you from? Oh, Keene. They go, we do this all the time. We love this. We bike out of Keene, go to Granite Roots, have a beer or 2, and bike back. They go, this is fantastic. Right? So because they're right along these roads, there's a lot of opportunity for that, you know?
Sounds like my sister when she used to walk, say, I'm going out walking, and she'd walk to like, and she'd walk like 2 miles, but she'd walk to like the Demoulas, get a fudgicle, turn around, come back.
Good for her.
Destination.
Good for her. She earned that. She earned that.
Just a little destination, just
Yeah.
something to get to.
The Scores Running Club annually sponsors and coordinates a run from downtown Keene all the way to Stewart and John's to have breakfast and then back again on a full belly.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that from the very beginning of the rail trail improvements. I think the other thing to note here is that this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And Mike, this is his passion project. He's not paid. This is fully volunteered, motivated, driven by you.
But it gets to drive really cool.
Oh, yeah,
it's
cool equipment that I never did before. Where I might need help is the connections. Those are gonna be big deals.
Yeah.
All of them, for whatever, and all different reasons, right? The one on the Fort Hills, this bridge, right? The one in Winchester is a CSX railroad issue, right? The one in Bellows Falls is putting a protected bike lane along Route 12. So none of them are easy, but man, they could be huge if we can make the connection. So I may come back in any way you could think maybe you could help there. I think that's one place, so.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
All right, we're gonna move on. Master agenda item number 1242, submitting annual report, Grants Department, Suzanne's here. Your action expected, receive informational report on the last 6 months of operations from the county grant manager.
Oh, breath.
I did.
She practices.
Mm-hmm.
That was all. Okay. How you guys doing?
Good.
Needed a break before you dive into
You go ahead and start on this.
before you dive into even more grants? While you do that, I will give Skipper something to do. One of your first official duties as clerk, to sign off on a grant. What that is just a tiny piece of paperwork for one of our grants. And if you wanna hang on to it until I talk about that one, you're welcome to. For your own enjoyment now or later. One for each of you.
Thank you. Save the tree.
Actually, it does save trees, because this printing paper helps support managed forests. Would otherwise be managed by people.
And just so that
Those
there was another one that I
Those
was
are
holding on to.
Thank you. Guys.
That's the money coming in, one of the good ones to look at.
The mission of the grants department, I would define as primarily two things: to manage grants and to write grants. In addition to that, we also provide free grant writing and assistance to other organizations that I do with my extra time, should there be any. Included within managing grants are the ones that we fiscally sponsor. In essence, it's bringing as much money to the county for grant funding as possible. The report that you're looking at here with the yellow at the top is the grants that we manage. These are the ones that we already have. Managing a grant, in essence, requires a lot of work. The key thing is knowing the rules. There's a ton of rules. There are federal rules, there are state rules, there are agency rules from the agency that makes the grant, then there are program rules, and then there are rules specific to the grant itself. There's at least 6 layers of rules for every single grant, at least 6 layers. And I'm here to know the rules and help ensure that we follow the rules. Included within all of those rules are things like managing the budget to actual. Every grant is on its own fiscal year. Only one of our 44 follows the calendar year, which is the county fiscal year. So you could say that 43 of the 44 grants follow exceptions to the rules. The rule is they all have exceptions. Every single expense that is charged to a grant is individually reviewed and personally scrutinized by Jen Robinson. She's our grant specialist. Her office is downstairs. Every time we want to make a purchase, it used to be in excess of $5,000, now it's in excess of $10,000. It has a whole other layer of rules, and that follows a rule book called procurement. Whenever we're awarding money, subcontracting would fall under two categories, subrecipients and vendors, and they each have their own set of rules, and we have to follow different protocols for making awards or making contracts, which has an added layer to whatever the county already does for these things. Every grant has their own kind of financial reporting. Every grant is a customized financial reporting. Even two grants from the same agency for the same program might follow different financial reporting rules, forms, or procedures, or deadlines. They all require what's called a drawdown. So in addition to filing a report with them, you have to formally request, I want this money. We have to reconcile what we do for a grant to the general ledger for Cheryl's purposes. We maintain an individual spreadsheet for every single grant to ensure we know the specific budget to actual. We also use the spreadsheets to track deliverables, like there's program reporting, there's specific reporting. There's a grant that has a report due at the end of this week that documents what trainings the participants of the grant have been to. They all have their own, this is a list of things you must do in order to have our money, and we follow that list and make sure that it's done. We don't necessarily do the things unless it applies to us, but we make sure those who are supposed to do the things are doing them and turning them in. Budget revisions are a whole different game in their own. I have two in limbo right now, one of which I started last June, I kid you not, and still have not gotten it approved. This one is the Department of Justice. I have another one that began last October, still working through numerous, please change this, do that, answer this question, give us this documentation, follow that process, follow a scope of work revision as well. There's programmatic changes, there's financial changes. Grants that require a match, we almost always aim to do this with in-kind whenever possible. But in-kind has its own level of documentation. And in some ways it's harder to put together because we don't have, for example, an invoice to support it. How do you support someone's time when there isn't a paycheck? And the other thing that I would do is create and implement policies for the county so that we're following these. Having a policy book at all is one of the requirements on the federal level. And you know that came into more formal adoption for the first time, although we've had one for all of the time that I've been doing this. So all of that goes into managing a grant. We had in 2024, 44 grants, the highest award value in at least 10 years, maybe all time, $21 million. That's the value of the total award, many of which are multi-year awards, $5 million in revenue alone in 2024. Not the highest was a little over $6 million, that was last year. Of those 44 grants, 14 are direct from the federal government, 21 passes through the state of New Hampshire first, then comes to us. 6 are direct from the state, and 3 are private. 28 of them are for us or one of our departments. 16 involve fiscal sponsorship. 26 were active at the year end, so we're starting 2025 with 26 grants right now, and 18 closed. We've stayed pretty consistent at that for at least 10 years. You give or take a few of them, but roughly, when asked, I say roughly 40 grants, 15 to 20 programs, about half are sponsored, about half are direct to us. This year, 13 new ones launched. This is something new that I have been tracking the last couple of years, is how many jobs are created because of our grants that would go away if we did not have a grant. Roughly 15 in 2024, 7 from the Connected Family Program alone, of which 5 positions, but 4 1/4 full-time equivalent, because some are partially funded. And then 3 3/4 from outside agencies through agreements. From treatment court, 3 direct to the county and 1 through a contract. Monadnock Coordinating Council for Regional Transportation, 3/4. 2 positions, a sum total of 3/4 in the county attorney's office. It's over now, but half of a position in the chamber. That was the one that Mike had referenced, Julie, was funded for 3 years under a grant that we worked with them with. At Southwest Region Planning Commission, they have a CDBG specialist that is paid through contracts under that grant, under our combination of grants. And then we have the newest one, which is Compassionate Care, and that has 1.5 positions. So just some highlights on the grants that we manage. These are the ones that come to us directly. 3 grants fund the treatment court. They have the most grants for any program. And then $77,000 for new solar panels at the Red Barn. I would consider this our most interesting grant at the present moment. I've not done an energy efficiency grant before. I've learned a lot about solar panels. We just issued the contract, like just last week. So this is a project that will be implemented this year. A little tidbit is we're $13,000 under budget. And assuming we don't go over the contracted amount, I will be coming back to you and asking, what do you want to do with that? It would have to be another energy efficiency project. And it should stay within the realm of what we already have. We'll probably have to do a formal revision with them, but we may have 13,000 to continue to work with.
That sounds like streetlights.
It could, that's what I was thinking, that you might wanna do that by the gym.
Yeah.
And I've already checked out as a project idea, yes, this could be done. It will require a formal revision, so at the point that we wanna do it, we'll wanna move quickly so that we can get that approved in enough time to implement it before the grant expires, which will be in, I think, about a year from now. I feel like it's either March or May next year. What you just signed off on, this little sheet here, that Skipper just signed off on, goes with the USDA Equipment Red Barn Grant. This is probably been the most time-consuming grant I have ever worked on, where we have not yet spent any money. We have been battling this one for years, actually. It originated as a congressionally directed spending request about 4 years ago, and then it was a formal application to USDA that is still in process. It really does honestly give me a sour feeling about thinking about USDA for any future grants. The amount of work that has gone into this has just been unbelievable. Chris can attest, he's followed this story and the bouncing ball for a long time. Where we're at with it now, it was originally going to be for reconstruction of the exterior, what they call the envelope of the building. But we hit so many hurdles to a point that it was going to cost us about $80,000 to keep this $112,000. And we decided this is not worth our while, and we weren't even there yet with what we could do with it. And we politely declined. Several months later, they come back to us and say, how about using it for equipment? We can make it a lot easier. That was months ago. That was months and months ago. And they said there weren't really any hiccups to that, except just give us a list of equipment. I've given them 2-3 lists of equipment. I followed up multiple times. They want another thing signed. They want more documents. I don't know what's next. I don't know where this one is going. Every time I check in with them, they need something else. They want something else. There's another requirement that nobody knew about until now.
I mean, it got to the point where I had to make complaints to the state because they have relationship with the USDA and they wanted to know this stuff. And I'm like, we just canceled $112,000 because it was going to cost us, like you said, $80,000. So we'd have $40,000 towards the project. it's like, this is ridiculous, no, we're done. And I think, like you said, you know, they came back in a few months, and it's just like, okay, if it's easy this time, okay. I had misgivings in that I didn't trust them. I think they were good, and they're good people, that they just, their turnaround time is horrendous, and they keep adding layers to it, that they say, no, it's gonna be easy, and then it's like, so we're watching it, but
We're watching it. It's extremely time consuming. It's been nuts, but
it would be great if it would just get done,
Yeah.
because what we get out of it is great.
yeah, what we'll get out of it is great. It's,
Doesn't make sense to put.
I would not apply or recommend for someone to apply to a USDA after this experience.
Yeah, I mean,
I would not recommend it.
You know, congressional spending requests, when they come through, they get assigned. It's not just like money coming, they get assigned to a department wherever it falls. And I'm always worried that they're gonna say USDA, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, as long as they don't say USDA, it's a go. And then we have 1.9 million in grants, over 13 grants. The sheriff's office is probably the one that has the most number of grants. Speaking of congressionally directed spending requests, that we frequently, almost annually, go back for something for them. Eli is a pleasure to work with. I miss Arlene. She was amazing to help with all of these narratives and stuff. We made a great team. And $2,000 combined over 4 mini grants, I would say, is our biggest bang for our buck, for our grant buck. This is the only grant I've ever come across that can be used specifically and directly for employees. We've done a variety of little things. The pantry, there's a pantry at Maplewood that we do for the employees up there. We've done a lot of workout equipment for the Department of Corrections, some workout equipment for 33 West Street. This is done by work site. We have 4 work sites that were covered last year. We're looking at adding the Connected Families work site this year, assuming they continue to give us the award. This is an award through Cheshire Medical Center. It's fairly simple, relatively simple compared to other grants and funds. It's something that I've never seen, employee benefits. So these are just a handful of highlights of grants that we manage directly for the county. We also fiscal sponsor. Remember, it was about 16-ish grants involve fiscal sponsorship. Our number one fiscal sponsorship is community development block grants. This is about as easy peasy as sponsorships get, because we contract out. This is the only grant program we contract out management. In Southwest Region Planning Commission has a part-time, has a full-time person who's part-time dedicated to community development block grants. At the moment, we have 5, of which 1 is falling off this year. That's the 109th. They're done. Castle Street is pretty close to done. Those 2 projects are an administrative closeout. Micro Enterprise is an ongoing annual program, so we see that one every year. Peer support and transformational planning are relatively newer ones. They will continue. We are working on scheduling a public hearing for mid-grant hearing for some of these, so you'll see in the coming weeks an update on these individual programs directly from Southwest Region Planning Commission. We have an annual grant from the Department of Justice. We call it the JAG grant. What that stands for, I don't recall. We've used that acronym for so long. We share the direct costs. That is what it's called. Maybe that is what it's called, Judge Advocate General. I'm not sure. That could be what it's called. We split the direct costs of it in half, and we also retain indirect costs. We've been using it for years for mobile data terminals and their connectivity through cell phones. Incidentally, the most recent grant that is not on this other report, and I will talk about grants that I write shortly, not on this, is a brand new one that I literally finished the first draft last night, is to expand the mobile data terminals under another grant, a congressionally directed spending request grant, and I'll come back to that, what that means later. The recreational trails you just heard so much about. The Monadnock Coordinating Council for Regional Transportation, the MRCC. We currently have a grant that ends this spring and a new one that I'm in process of writing right now. This one covers transportation. It's mostly reimbursements for mileage for volunteer drivers and reimbursements for the friendly bus through HCS. We have MCVP and CMC combined, make up the Compassionate Care Project, that's one of our newest. And the Greater Monadnock Medical Reserve Corps is an ongoing one until expended. They're coming down the home stretch. It's been a very slow trickle of a spend down for them for various reasons. It covers small projects to keep the Medical Reserve Corps engaged. In the event that we have an emergency, they are a cohesive team with the equipment that they need.
How far do they reach?
The Monadnock region, they cover the full Monadnock region.
Do they train communities?
They don't train communities, they train the Reserve Corps themselves. They do a few projects, like one of the projects they have is to get carbon monoxide detectors into senior citizens' homes. So they have tiny projects like that, but they're intended to train citizens who want to be on call and volunteers in the event of emergency. In most cases, these are retired nurses or doctors, medical personnel that have left the field but
I was
stay
on a
engaged.
medical reserve corps before I moved up here.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know what it is. I'm trying to figure out how far does it reach and what communities does it actually benefit?
All of them, all of 23 Cheshire County towns, plus the 10 westernmost towns in Hillsborough, the Monadnock region. And it is coordinated by Tricia Zahn and her team at Cheshire Medical Center. I can connect if you want to volunteer. They meet on, if you're looking for more to
I
do.
have 11 volunteer commitments. and
Maybe not that
I'm
one.
not sure I need another one, but no, I was
Even
just
does.
curious because a lot of us went down on some of the big storms and staffed very large overnight shelters, emergency shelters, like set up in high schools and things like that. So I wasn't sure if they also trained to be able to support something like that, since we do live in
Not
an
really.
area.
Not
Yeah.
really. I mean, they could, it's not that they can't, but they pretty much stick to the bare bone basics due to capacity and volunteers. And the last time I believe they were activated were for the vaccines for COVID. They had a big participant. They engaged a lot of those people to be the ones to get, when they were doing the big vaccine clinics, there was one over at Keene State College campus. That was the involvement and coordination of the Reserve Corps, among other things. Before I move on to grants that we write, do you have any other questions on grants that we manage or sponsor?
The time frame of these managed grants, is this in 1 year?
1 calendar year. Yeah, the report like this is based on our calendar year of grants, yeah. And then I start it over again because that's our fiscal year. The next is grants that I write, that's this one. This is 2 pages. The top page is 2025 and the second page is 2024, now over. Both these reports, I would say, the 2024 of ones that I write and the 2024 is pretty much final, with the exception of any changes that might occur through our audit. But these are our final numbers pending the audit. So 2025 on the top and 2024 underneath. 2024 was a pretty good year. That's a record-breaking 7.4 million in award value that we were awarded. 13 grants awarded out of 15 applied for, 2 were denied. And so far in 2025, and this is already outdated because I created this report on Monday and how quickly things change in grants. We still have 1 pending, but I now have 5 in process, maybe 5.5. I will tell you about that in a moment. 6 that I know I'm going to be writing. So at the moment, 12 or 13 you could say, are at some phase in the grant writing process. You could think of the grants that we write this year become the ones that are implemented next year. So when you look at management, everyone here was previously here, usually in the year before. Sometimes I write something in the spring that gets awarded in the fall and begins in the fall, but usually, even if it's awarded in the fall, we don't start on it until the following year. So it's a 2-year process to get going. What it involves to write a grant, I think of it as a very specialized project management field. There's this much writing, there's that much coordination. It's like being the master of a task list and knowing who has what pieces and bringing it all together. Searching for grants takes an extraordinary amount of time. You would think that they would just be there. If I already knew all of the grants, half of my job I would have nothing to do. searching for grants and staying on top of what's available at any given time because there's no go-to source. They're all over the place. They're all over the place. And then what happens with them further complicates things. Where they're available. Is it a rolling deadline? Does it have a specific deadline? Being ready in time for the deadline. Making them matched, because just because it's something that we want, it has to be something that the funder wants too. Coordinating a team of stakeholders. Anybody who might have something to do with the project and bringing people together. Researching data, statistics, writing the narrative itself, going through multiple phases of drafts. Creating a budget, going through multiple phases of budgets, making sure the budget and the narrative have something to do with each other. And strategic planning and program development is a pretty big one. We don't always have something ready to go. A shelf-ready project is maybe half the time. The other half of the time, we prepare a project and bring it together. And then whenever we're designing projects, inevitably jobs are created or needed, or even we're just reaffirming jobs that are already there and it involves job descriptions. And then work plans, and then memorandums of understanding. And that's just a sample list of usually about 20 attachments. Any given grant can range between a few pages, and I've written some as large as over 100 pages when you include the attachments. It's like a term paper with a budget. It's a big, big job. Okay. So just some of the grants. The American Trails Mike had featured for us. That's this year's first grant and presently only grant submitted, but we're only in February. We're only in February. DOT MRCC I'm working on right now. I finished that yesterday. I'm waiting on a response from the funder about what to do with the calculation that I see is possibly incorrect on their budget form. That tiny little detail, I'm gonna change something in the narrative, and off that one goes to the MRCC to approve next Tuesday at their meeting, and then I will be submitting that before the end of the month. I'm working right now on, we have 2 congressionally directed spending requests awarded last year. And it's a 2-phase project. You have the application to the congressionally directed spending request. That is competitive. Once they award it, then you have to do in the following year a formal application, which is usually 3 times, 4 times the length, and all of the bells and whistles and formalities that go with a grant, and you do that direct with the federal agency. So we got awarded 2 last year, and I'm waiting for the federal agency to reach out to us to say, here's your application package, please apply, and it becomes what's called an invitation to apply, meaning we will get it, it's not competitive, but we still have to apply in all of the formal way. So you have the competition first, then the full application. Every other federal grant is both together, the full application and the competition together. I'm doing that right now with Bulletproof Vests, JAG, DV Prosecutor, Recreational Trails, Healthy Manana. Those I would say are all the smoothest grants. We do them every year. I can zip through those quite quickly. In most cases, some of these grants I can write in less than a day because I know them so well. I've just recycled my knowledge on it so much. The Department of Justice Community Supervision, I'm glad Doug is here. This is our most uncertain grant of the year because I don't know which way it's going to go. I'm already writing it, but yet we don't have a formal announcement. Department of Justice normally would be putting this out February or March. It would normally be due in April or May, but there's a lot of uncertainty on the federal level. We still have to have more discussions with the team that's putting it together. This one, I don't know where it's going to go, but it's already involved a lot of program development. And I like to think that even if we don't end up with an application, or even if we do end up with an application but not a grant, these discussions around developing a program are very useful for strategic development for the department or the organization that we work with. That I've had a part in a lot of discussions that Doug, in a broader team of about 20 people, having anything to do with community supervision, with programs involving people working their way through criminal justice, these are vital conversations that whether or not we apply for a grant has helped them understand what they're doing, what they need to do or want to do, what each other is doing, discussions that wouldn't occur if a grant wasn't available in the first place or even considered, whether or not it turns into an application or an award later. Before I move on to another topic, do you have any questions on the grants that we write? So I told you about the MRCC, and that one we're applying to. I told you about the USDA. 2 grants that we're writing now that are not shown, because they're just coming new. I started to tell you about the congressionally directed spending for the sheriff's office. What that is going to be, we're gonna apply to the Department of Justice as the agency. So if awarded during the congressionally directed spending process this year, it becomes a formal application next year. We're looking to get software. It's called records management software. As we speak, Eli is talking with a vendor and gathering details. I finished the first draft of this application last night. It's due at the end of the month. We're waiting on the budget, that's today's conversation that Eli is having at this very moment. And we're somewhere around 300,000 is what we think it's gonna be. We're gonna throw in there a request for mobile data terminals for the law enforcement officers in the county. This will serve the whole county. But not all of them have remote access. Our officers do our deputies do under the grant that I was just telling you about, the JAG grant. We have mobile data terminals that we purchased for them some time ago. We pay for their connectivity, their virtual access to it. We pay for that through the JAG grant. But not all of the law enforcement agencies in Cheshire County have that. And we will have an ability for them to access the records management system, which holds the information about investigations, arrests, things of that nature. Essentially a record on addresses, vehicles, people, even the K-9, their abilities, and it holds all of the data. It's a database for law enforcement.
Does that include motor vehicle records or something? I was talking.
Eli would have to answer that question. Yeah, that I don't know.
A couple of small towns were concerned about communicating and software issues. Now,
that is what we're talking about, yeah. Right now we have what's called a single point of access. You have to go through our single point of access, and it's stored on a local server right here. This new system would be web-based and have a multi-jurisdictional, multiple users that could access it at any given time. It's gonna save Rob Hummel and his team time and money. It will save the sheriff time and money. It will save all of our communities time and money, but more importantly, it's gonna increase public safety. So our officers will be able to work more efficiently. They won't have to go through dispatch, they will just be able to directly access it.
that was part of the concern, having to go through dispatch to get information.
Yeah, they will not have to do that. We're 2 years away, like assuming we get it this year, then we formally apply next year, then it turns into a cash flow and a system the following year. So we would be 2 years away from this.
All right, being addressed, okay.
But it's being addressed, yeah. Grants are, I like to tell people right off the bat, in almost all cases, grants are slow money. They're slow, it's a slow, patient process, but if you have the time and you wanna make sure all those strings are attached and you're able to do them, it's very much worth our while, because whether or not we have a grant for this, that's something that has to be done. The current software is over 25 years old and is no longer being updated for improvements. Imagine working off of a Microsoft Word edition that's 25 years old. You're not even compatible with whoever else is doing stuff. So if it can't get covered this way, it will have to be covered eventually, probably with taxpayer money. It will be an even longer process though, going that way. So this gives us a chance of offsetting something.
All
I
right,
have a question.
thank
You
you.
have a grant in here that was denied last year. It was for the safe exchange and visitation. I don't see it on the list of grants that we're gonna go for this year.
No, we're not gonna go for it. There's a couple of reasons behind that.
Yeah,
Do you wanna tell them?
well, I think you probably know it better than I, but
The 2 key reasons is we have applied and been denied twice, and the primary piece of feedback they give us for why we've been denied is that we don't have the requisite partnership with the courts. And that partnership can really only be developed best by Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention. When I delivered that feedback, almost as soon as I did, the director, who was fresh and new on the job, had already decided to take another. So we're starting over again with that. When they get someone new in, I will bring them up to speed and let them know that this is something that the community vitally needs. We are the only state that does not pay for safe exchange centers. All other 49 states do. If we had that level of partnership with the courts that this grant requires, which is essentially a commitment to the project, and we have not been able to get them to write a letter and commit to this project and them working with us on it.
Right. We had.
We'll never get anywhere with it.
We had a visiting center where we had this, it was over on Vernon Street over here, and right next to the fire department. It was run by MFS.
All our kids.
All our kids, yeah, and it was there for years, and there was a woman that owned the building that pretty much gave she was a big supporter of MFS, gave them that portion of the building. They also had acting out in there and some other programming. And it just fell by the wayside, and then peer mediation took over that portion where it was. And so, or peer support.
Peer support.
And now not peer support is now in that, so we don't, you're 100% right, we don't. There was an individual that was really wanting to push this, and I don't know how active she now is on that whole idea of it.
She doesn't have the time, and I
Yeah.
think she also got disappointed a little too much.
Yeah, so it sort of fell by the wayside.
Can I ask a question? When you said the other 51 states do this, you mean counties do it? Or?
No, states.
States, okay.
States
States
fund it,
actually fund it.
Okay, got it.
yeah. States fund it.
So we're waiting for somebody to come to this agency and decide that they're gonna invest some time on making this relationship?
Or hopefully, yeah, that's basically it.
Say that again, I don't,
So we don't have a relationship with a judicial partner,
Correct,
right.
and that's what's missing. But
correct,
that only can come from the agency itself.
right.
And the agency, because of its staffing issues, hasn't made it a priority to make this partnership for
Basically.
whatever reason.
I think it's a staffing issue, because they've had turnover for so much. And what I can understand that this grant needs is a pre-existing relationship and commitment. We've written into the grant roughly something that sounds like this: if you give us the money, then we
Make
believe
it.
that the court will
Right,
be happy to work with us.
right.
I've reached out to the court during the grant writing process twice to get their commitment. This grant requires very specific phrasing of words in the letter of commitment from the court. And both times, they've changed the phrasing. The phrasing needs to sound as if, something to the effect of, we will work with you, we will implement the project with you. But they changed the phrasing to, we support you guys doing the project. And that is not what the grant is looking for.
Right.
We believe we don't need the court system necessarily to do this project. So this is where my job as a grant writer is to merge together what we want and what the funder wants.
Right.
And make it one.
I mean, it's just an important program, so.
It's very
just-
important.
I'm disappointed to see that something like that is standing in the way of creating a safe space.
That's how it goes
Yeah.
sometimes.
And a lot
But
of,
it's on them to
what
do.
happens is it means that it's now McDonald's.
Right, and I
Yeah,
know.
no, I mean, because actually, when I'm sitting here thinking about it,
Yeah,
actually, at some point, that space became part of my responsibility when I worked for Monadnock Developmental Services, because we ran a parent aid program. And so all of a sudden, it got shifted from MFS. It was still MFS building, but and so we coordinated all the visits and, because somebody has to be there too.
Yeah,
You have to have a supervised visit. If they're not supplying, if the court's not supplying, if somebody's not supplying, you have to have that area.
now in the court's defense, when we've approached them these two times, it's been weeks to a deadline. We're asking them to make a commitment to a project that is just coming to their attention. And they have their own bureaucracy and layers of people to run things through. We can't just go to the courthouse next door and say, sign this.
so when you say the court, you're talking about people
No.
over here.
I'm talking about the
The
administrative office of the courts at the state of New Hampshire level. They're the ones who can authorize the local judge to sign on to a commitment of a project. The local judge themselves can't just commit to a project. Parts of this project include changing their forms and the questions they ask during hearings, the information they collect and make available afterwards. One of the key parts of this project would be to change a form so that it specifies the details of custody and exchanges. And we need the court to approve something like that. And all we can write into a grant is that if you give us the money, we're pretty sure we can convince the court that they'll change their form. But what the grant wants is for that commitment to be there at the time you're writing the application.
And
So I've advised MCBP, but now we're on a new person, to develop that.
Has a new person started already?
No, they're just searching. I know that they've had interviews.
Okay.
That's how new it is. Yeah,
Well, he left January 28th.
yeah. He gave his notice 2 or 3 months before, but executive director, that could take 6 months or so.
It sure does.
And then they
Yeah.
need to get their feet wet for a little while. And then they need
Right.
to go make friends with the county attorneys and then everyone.
Currently, the board chair is overseeing because I know that because they just sent me an email about parking. And I said no.
I will know when they're on board because we have that
Yeah.
other grant.
I would be interested in keeping this on my radar.
I will be sure that when we get a new person there, that not only do I give them this orientation, but they should come and give a talk just like Cody did this morning. And I think that you guys saying that you back this initiative will be really helpful for them to feel that courage and motivation to take those steps with the board.
It's really interesting because we did at one point see if we could get legislation. I think we actually put legislation in some years ago now, and it became a hot potato. It became a hot potato with men's groups because this is 90% of the time the visitations going on with men, and they're angry because they think the courts have somehow screwed them over in the process, or whether that's real or not. I don't know, but it became a real,
Well, it is an
and
opportunity.
it sort of died,
Yeah.
it just died.
It's also an opportunity for violent encounters,
Oh, yes.
and that creates a hardship for anybody who does want to get this going, is to sort of keep that in the back of their mind,
Well,
that there is that holdover anger.
I always said that the Blastos room, which is next to the police station, had enough space that we could do we could do
Yeah.
it, we could put a small, it doesn't have to be that big, it just has to have some toys, it has to have some things to keep the child occupied so that the parent can work with the child and have doing some
Yeah.
things, but, because it was next to the fire department.
Yeah,
We thought that was good.
Yeah, and also what was so nice about this one is one party would enter on Washington Street and the other party would enter on Vernon Street, so
Yeah.
you never even
I
had to
just
have
think it's
them.
really needed, so I
Oh, gosh, a lot of
would
people
really
do.
like
Yeah.
to keep an eye on this one.
Yeah, that's why MCBP is the right organization. Also too, this grant requires that it serve victims of domestic violence or sexual assault and their children. It would not be available as a launch project for everyone who needs to access it.
Well, even those two categories, I mean, that's just already a lot of stress and chaos.
Correct,
Right.
correct. But it would get the program started.
Yeah.
This funding could launch the program for the most vulnerable population who need it.
Yeah,
It could get it started, and then over time, you develop other systems. Like we could develop, there's a variety of ways that we had come up with ways that this could be sustained and expanded to all populations to use it. But this grant would cover a lot of the necessities to open the doors in the first place. That would take 6 figures or more out of tax dollars to do instead.
yeah.
So we want to put this on the consent agenda,
What?
this item here to talk about.
We can put it on we can put it underneath the commissioners' conversations, and we can just put it right below it, so we can keep it.
That would be a great idea.
I would really like
Yeah.
to be able to follow up on this particular item.
And I think that your advocacy direct with the courts when the time comes would be instrumental. Because a lot of times this is happening because I feel like they don't see the priority coming from us, because they're just hearing from us when it's me asking for a letter to be signed for an application. But as a grant writer, that's really stepping out of my lane to make friends with the court system for a project like this. But it doesn't necessarily have to be MCBP. If you were wanting to take the first few steps of, who would be our first line of contact? We don't even know that.
No.
Like, we're starting with the secretary, And we're not even sure that we're working with the right person. Like, we're not even sure who is that right person. That's how undeveloped the connection with the court system is
And
right
we're
now.
already doing this work because we have Connected Families New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that they're working in environments where there is a wife raising a child that's at risk at a displacement, but the father's out of the home, or vice versa, not likely, but I mean, that does happen, then it is, you know, we're already having those visits, we're already going to the McDonald's and doing that, you know, doing the visit, then people leave and all that, so.
So I will give you a call and get some more information from you, that way we don't suck up a lot of time here, but this is a topic that's.
We just go downstairs,
I know.
knock on the door.
Well, she's over there.
Well, no, but downstairs they don't, because they don't have the executive director.
Right.
This was something that Mick, the executive director, was gonna roll with this past fall.
Yeah.
But then he started entertaining other options, and I feel like that's a ball that could very easily be dropped because it's not even something that's initiated yet. And when somebody new comes on board, if they can hear from you of how important this initiative could be. I can share with you the letters that we have collected, the conversation that we've had, et cetera.
All right, so I'll give you
And
a
just
call
so you
and
know-
schedule some time.
Yeah,
Just so you know, if this does get going again, I bet you Gina would be somebody.
If
that
Gina
would
thought it had a
actually-
chance,
Right,
yeah, I think
she'd
she
get
was
back
so
on this
disappointed.
because she's experienced this, she's lived this.
Yeah, she's
So
lived
this
it,
is why this is passionate for her.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I totally back the programs also on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whether or not there's grant funding, I mean, it's one of those things that, it's a community problem that I feel like it's sad that only money can solve. Yeah. Okay, going on to grant writing. We've done 3 courses, 2 in the one last spring, and then 2 each in the prior falls. I'm ready to announce the one that I was gonna do this year on Tuesdays, May 6th to June 10th. I'm hesitant because of everything going on in the federal grant landscape. And I'm feeling like I'm not sure if we should even do it this year. I don't know how much, so much is changing. I don't even know if information I have is gonna be relevant. I don't.
You're pushing it out.
Oh, there really is no other time during the year. I mean, I could consider November again, but I'm also trying to balance it with what our department has going on. And the fact that when I do these, even though I'm offering the course and I'm teaching it on Tuesday mornings, it will consume the vast majority of my time for the whole 6 weeks that I do this. And then a pretty good amount of my time for a couple of months after, because all of the inquiries I get from other people go through the roof. And the amount of time that it takes just to respond to emails and give feedback, I mean, it's easily 3/4 of my time, and sometimes all of it for the whole time. It's not a quick and easy thing to do. I do think I enjoy it. At least I'm enjoying it so far. But I'm not so sure about this one now because everything happening on the federal grant landscape, that at the moment is taking most of my time. Just following those trends, just watching the forums and seeing what's happening. We had a major scare a couple weeks ago. And I easily got 50 emails in a matter of 48 hours. And I probably sent out twice as many. Which just was a roller coaster. Your funding's going away. Oh wait, no, and now it is, and then it isn't. And then now all the rules have changed, and there's memos coming out every day. Some people are losing their
Or grants
funds.
are supposed to be out now that normally would be out that aren't out
Yeah.
yet, so are they really gonna happen?
Are they really gonna, like, part of this includes how to search for grants and how to understand if applying for the grant is worth your while. I don't even know how to present that with the current landscape.
Changing rules.
Well,
yeah.
the problem is if you don't offer it,
Right.
and then things settle down, then people are further away from the skill set.
It's true.
Because sooner or later, like, you know, the starts and stops that are going on right now, that is going to settle in one way or the other. And by the time it does settle down, people will either have the skills to go for what was restored or address the new landscape.
That's
And
true.
My thing is I just had this conversation with Todd Horning, 2 days ago. And because he said, should we combine efforts and hold a thing around grants and where things are at with DC, or is it too early yet? And I said, I would rather start doing something now and be proactive around getting a group of people together to start having the discussion. We may not have a lot to talk about at this point, but we can at least identify who's not in the group that we should bring in, and we can have this group moving forward that can meet on a monthly basis to say, this is what we've learned so far. This is, instead of reacting, all of a sudden they do this, now we can bring everybody together. I said, let's start now. I was thinking the same thing that you were thinking, is that, unless there's a time suck that's not been factored into all this, I say that we keep pumping it out, because we're not just talking about federal grants either. Some of these people are coming in, they may be looking at foundations and other things that may, so let's, my thing is, and I've said this before to you, is that I want us to be the corner of the state that is so educated about it, that we're going out and we're pulling money in and taking money away from the rest of the state, if not the rest of the country, because we're writing these grants. Because if we don't do it, it's like with congressional spending requests. People have certain feelings about, it's pork, it's this, it's that. I don't care, because if we don't go after it, somebody else, Kentucky,
And you've already
Illinois,
paid your taxes.
and right, and if I can,
It is a zero-sum game.
this building is 1.4 renovations, 1.6 renovations from the outside into the inside, and it didn't cost anybody anything, because we were able to figure out one way or the other in different funding streams. That's why I'm always gonna say, we're gonna go after anything we can go out there. So I would say, think about it,
Do it anyway?
and do it, and
Funding methods are gonna continue no matter what happens in Washington,
I don't know about that.
Well, no, there will be a new.
Think so?
It'll
It'll be
either
normal.
slide,
It'll
it'll
be a
either
new
slide
normal.
back into what it was, or there'll be a new normal. And we'll, at some point, have to talk about other opportunities to run these programs, or.
when do you go to your conferences? Sorry, Gary.
Oh, speaking of, I've got one coming up in mid-March, and the other one is early November. The one coming up in mid-March is very specific to federal grants. So I've never been excited to go to a conference before, but this one feels to me like any time I've ever been, this is the time to be at this.
Yeah.
There's so much happening on the federal level that I'm just like, every day, it's, on the one hand, the geek in me is like, this is exciting, it's never been exciting like this before. But on the other hand, it's never been exciting like this before. So, yeah, this is gonna be a big year for the federal grant conference in March. I'm sure I will come back with more info. The only other thing that I feel concerned about with this is that with everything being pushed back, one of the reasons May, June is a real good time to offer this is because most of our federal grants would have been written by then. Or due before then. And with everything moving back, like, am I gonna be midway through a couple of federal grants at this point? I already know the community supervision one is one we will go for when it becomes available, And in most cases, I say the federal grant writing season runs from roughly the winter, usually it sometimes as early as November, but almost always by January, they start making the announcements. Then there's a flood of them in February and March. This year, we've had the exact opposite. It's like a reverse tidal wave. Every time I go on grants.gov, there's fewer and fewer and fewer grant opportunities than there were even the day before. I've already sent out 3 or 4, hey, this is a grant that I thought you might be interested in, let me know if you wanna go for it, and then 2 days later, it's already down. Yeah, it's coming to a point that I'm not even sending them out anymore because you raise up hopes for them to come pummeling down. So I don't know, will I be in the middle, or will we have to turn down a grant? Oh, I don't have the capacity to write it because I'm in the middle of this grant course. Like, but you're right though, like, we don't know what we don't know right now. And if you guys are comfortable with me pushing forward, I'd like to send out the email like this week, if not next week. Once I send out the emails, then I feel like, not that there's no going back, but I wouldn't want to go back on it. I don't want to say, oh, we're changing it now. But there's reason, like, the winter is never the right time, and it's not because of the weather, it's because, like I just said, we've got all of our federal grants coming out, and I need to be focused on those. Summer, people just can't attend it, although summer, in terms of capacity, would be an ideal time. We do have a lot of our grants that close in July for the fiscal year ending at the state level. So July is really busy, but that's busy more for Jen than for me. I could do July, August, September, except that we would not get a lot of people who would show up being summertime. October, November is another halfway decent time. But if it's not the spring or the fall, then it's not at all. Those are really the only 2 times of the year that I feel like I have enough availability and capacity balanced with people wanting to come to something like this. But I have been thinking, and I'm gonna ask the feedback of the next class, maybe your feedback now too, to offer a single session, maybe in the middle of the summer, on just how to find a grant. And that's one that I need to see where the federal stuff lands, because that would have a lot to do with it. That would change an entire segment of the presentation. But that's something that I would say is the #1 thing people want to know. And I've experimented with putting it at the beginning of the workshops or at the end or in the middle. But it's always the #1 thing that people want. And it might be worth just doing a session on that, maybe a couple times a year. And recycling that one over and over again a few times a year, not doing the whole sequence of how to write a grant, but just specifically, here's how you find a grant, especially with a customized strategy for Cheshire County. Because there are certain tidbits that I tell them, things like, I have a subscription to Grant Watch, and you could come to my office and we can log in together and I can show you how to use it, and then you can sit at the table in my office and search for grants for a couple of hours while I'm there to answer any questions that you have. That's not something I would just put in a grant search lecture for anybody. That's very specific. Here's how you can find a grant in Cheshire County. Come visit me for an afternoon.
So I say we move forward with the May and June training.
I will make that announcement if you guys are open to it.
And you can add my name to the list of attendees.
You are already on it.
Ooh, thank you.
You'll know.
I need to know more.
Would Terry, would Skipper like to be on it? If only to forward the announcement.
My time problem, I have a problem with time, I wouldn't be able to do it, but I support it.
Very good. Terry, you want to be on my class?
Yes, I've always wanted to. I was wondering why I've never been invited before.
Ah, your behavior?
And I will tell
Maybe
you-
my behavior,
Your
yeah.
behavior.
I
My
will tell you
deportment.
that she's in her element when Suzanne's out there.
She's levitating.
I've
Energy.
sat in the back, and just watched, and it's interactive, and you've gotta, she's asking questions, it's not a lecture.
Yeah.
It's not like this,
And it's
where it's
got-
all like, action.
And it's got snacks.
Yeah, and you know, with the
Snacks.
It does have snacks this time, yeah.
Okay, fruit?
I'm kicking it up a notch. I like making sure that there are berries there. And
There
I
you go.
try to only get the food that if there's leftovers, I would be willing to eat. So I do
Get away
not
from
get
the
food that I
cookies.
personally would not eat.
Yeah, that thing last night, those snacks
Oh,
were
yeah.
horrible.
Oh, my
I
God,
stood
yeah.
there eating celery sticks, trying to be quiet.
No Dunkin' Donuts for you guys. We'll get some fresh stuff. Yes, yes.
So awesome, I would appreciate
I would love it if
being able
you,
to participate.
so I'm looking at Tuesday mornings.
Yep.
There you go.
There you
All
go.
right. Next topic is the organizations we've assisted. The vast majority of these come from the classes. Whether it's somebody who's been to the class who keeps reaching out, or they've passed on the word. This is without any advertisement. This is just word of mouth, and I would not do advertisement. This is not my focus. We have decided that we're cutting out that contract, and we've off and on over the last couple of years talked about a position. And it's usually revolved around this. These are things that I use to fill in the time, in large part, because I like this part of it. I want to help people when they call, but it is not the focus. My focus is writing and managing our grants. And so when I'm asked, this is what I tell them, that's my real job. But if I'm available at the time that I'm being asked something, I will most definitely, especially if it's quick reply. I can always do a quick reply. But I also offer everything from, you're looking for something, here are some search, and that's my #1 request. I literally this morning responded to one, they're looking to one of the towns, Hinsdale, is looking for equipment for their police department, and they're like, what grant do you know about? And I can reply faster than it could take them all day to search.
Sure.
I replied with an opportunity that I thought they should jump on immediately, because it's due, the congressionally directed spending request. I'm like, your best bet for what you're looking for is that. And most of my requests revolve around that. A pretty good balance of them also are, I'm working on this grant, can you take a look at it? I'm thinking of applying to this grant, do you think it's appropriate? Those are the other 2 common requests. A lot of people I now have good contacts with, and they reach out very comfortably. Cody is one of them. Cody and I have talked about grants many, many times. We're just, networked together well. Other people just reach out of the blue, and I haven't heard from them before. But this is all just word of mouth.
Which is the best advertising.
Which is the best advertising. I would not be able to, without another position, and that's why we've off and on talked about, do we want to add a position? Should it be contract? Should it not be contract? What would that position do? I'm probably at capacity for serving for what we have. But I also don't know that there is room to expand for more. We are applying for all the grants that could directly serve Cheshire County. I'm never turning any of our own departments away. Eli knows that, because he's my most frequent customer. But even other departments, I've never turned, it's more a matter of, it's coming to my attention with 2 weeks to go. You can't make any grant happen in 2 weeks. It wouldn't matter if we had another staff person or not. Or I want to apply for this grant, but I'm looking at it like, that's not a good fit. We don't stand a chance on that one. But I'm never like, oh, I just don't have the capacity, even though the timeline is there. That's never happened. It's always been more of a practical reason that another person isn't really going to solve. But what an additional person, if you want to continue the conversations or share the word, this would be it, to serve our organizations. But how could it be that every town could pitch in equitably to something? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that that's really what it is meant for. It's meant for more like the librarian. Books are available for everyone, whether you come to check them out or not. Simply having that service available serves everyone, whether you use it or you don't. It's something that I view kind of like that. That what would an additional person be able to do? Something like this, serve as a real resource to the towns and the nonprofits. And as you can see here, we have a nice mix of towns and nonprofits that, depending on what they need at the time that they need it, what they're reaching out for varies.
Okay.
Special projects, and this is the last of that. We've taken up a lot of time. In order to help speed up the response to people who have questions or inquiries about what grants are available to them, it took me the greater part of last year to do the most comprehensive search that I've ever done. Now I'm just going to keep it up to date. It's mostly a very long list of private grants, and this is what I would feature in my presentation on how to find grants in Cheshire County, for Cheshire County, that I have the best understanding I've ever had. I had hoped that the dream of AI would help with this, and it has not. What AI has helped with, and that's this year's special project that I'm leaning towards, is finding the right AI to help with grants and integrating something like that into my grant writing course, how to use AI better. It is not so great for searching for a large number of reasons, but what it is great for is taking a sloppy copy of a narrative and a question and plopping it in there. But what I have learned through that process is the numerous number of grants that are good for Cheshire County, and I set it up in a Word document in such a way that when someone asks me, I can quickly go through it. I had originally thought this would be a document that I would share in its entirety, but it is way too overwhelming. And that's the feedback that I got. Like, somebody looks at it and they're just like, I'm not looking at it at all. It's too much. So I pare it down and deliver a customized list to those who ask, rather than, here's the whole thing. That's the block. You know already, we did a sweeping update to our grant policy because there were massive changes to the federal rules, which happens every 5 years. And under the new set of rules that we're about to expect, I would imagine we will be revising it sooner than later, or not. And then the next step, and this is another one that I'm kind of hesitant on, I wanted to see where we're gonna land with our grants training, but to do an annual, our grant writing, but an annual grants training. For example, we had an employee that reached out who had a question about travel, and they weren't even aware that we had a travel policy specific for grants, and they're grant funded. Just little things like that, if only to have a refresher on people's mind that if you're thinking about this or that, and it involves a grant, you should think about the grants department. But it goes through all the key points that somebody who either works on a grant-funded project, or supervises, or has someone in their department who does, it's the need to know most high-level stuff. Like, this is what reporting looks like, this is how you do a budget to actual. You should let me know if you're gonna spend more than $10,000. You should make sure that you have a budget for travel. And if you don't, you can't travel on a grant. We already had that one happen. Somebody booked training, already paid for training, to find out that, oh wait, if we're gonna pay for it by grant, it has to be in the budget, and it is not. So just things like that, if for no other reason than to keep it on the forefront of people's mind. Now I'm gonna give them the grants manual, but we know that people don't actually sit down to read 60 pages of policy. So this is to check the box. And also so I can put in a narrative in each grant that says the reason you should trust Cheshire County, among many reasons, is because we train the employees who work on grants on how to work on a grant. So you can trust us that we know what we're doing over here, we have this annual training. So just to include it in the narrative, but to also do the due diligence behind the scenes and help people who feel that they felt they don't have what the knowledge they need to have. So they're not caught off guard. Oh, I didn't know that that has to be approved. So maybe we won't fully avoid that, but I at least want to do the part that we can in making it an annual appearance. I'm thinking June following the grant writing class, mid-June makes the most sense. Chris and I have talked about this. July, August, not a good, too many vacations, not a good time. We have a lot of grants that start in July because of the state fiscal year. Most of our grants are on the state fiscal or on their own customized. Some grants start and end either the federal grant year, October, or whenever they get started. They're on these odd ones. They're all over the place. But most grants begin or have begun by July. So I'm thinking if not June, then it would be in the fall. But whatever we get it going, it becomes an annual thing that they can rely on, similar to our safety training. We know that comes up every year. And if you can't be there, then you'll have a fabulous slideshow. And I can say that you've at least gotten the slideshow from the manual, and then maybe come next year. So that's what's going on in the world of grants.
Thank you.
You guys have had a bunch of information all at once.
Yeah?
Can I answer any questions for you? If it feels confusing, that's normal for grants.
If I have any questions, I'll call you, since I'm gonna call you anyway to follow up on this other thing.
For sure.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
very much. I can imagine the complications of the federal rules.
It's a lot, but
Unfortunately, it goes with the nursing home. the
everything,
Grants, they
everything.
just come at us in
I've
all
come to learn that
directions.
because for the years that I've had federal grants in my life through work, it's about, sometimes I think people just add on more stuff because it just secures their job
That's
that
right.
much more. That's the only way I
That's
can
right.
figure it. I don't think there's
No, there
anything,
isn't.
Well, it
like
does start with-
devious,
It starts with oversight. They really need to
Yeah.
make sure that when they're giving out money, that it's used properly. But then after a while, it probably gets, just like any
Yeah.
other thing, it grows and it needs to be looked at.
I mean, when Catherine says that they get anywhere between 400 to 600 pages of new stuff from the Center for Medicaid Services or new policies, it's like every year, and that they
Yeah.
have to take,
More than
they have to
once
take
a
their
year.
leadership team and for months to go through it to make sure they're meeting all the new standards and stuff. It takes, I'm just saying that, why? I mean, like I for years had to have, we had 60 some odd homes that had to be certified every year by the state of New Hampshire. And I could get everything to a T, but there'd be some new directive in one of their department head meetings that you have to be looking at this, or you have somebody that just doesn't like you, literally, didn't like the home, didn't like the person, didn't like something, or just was having a bad day. And it didn't make sense. It's like, it's all there, but it is what it is. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Little change of pace here real quickly. I'm just gonna hand this out real quickly. It's a
Yeah, I
quick
saw
read,
that.
but it's a good read. You're gonna like it.
That was a great story.
You got it? Okay. I was gonna hand it to you. Thank you.
Can I have a copy?
Mm-hmm.
This is what you all were talking about yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, on Facebook and stuff.
Yeah, very touching,
Yeah,
very touching, you know?
it's what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
The untold story, right?
Yeah, and Ed is such a teddy bear, too.
I know he is.
He's huge.
I can see him,
He's
He is
huge.
no, but I
a
can
large
see him there.
human being.
Yeah.
I can see
Very
him there
large
doing
human
that, you
being.
know?
Yeah, but he's
That's
just a,
nice. That's
he
a
is
nice
he's a
story.
teddy bear at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he drove to Ohio because on YouTube, he was watching this baby elephant that was at the Cincinnati Zoo. And he said, I gotta go visit it. So he took a day, a few days off, drove there to go see this, it's just like, he's
That's
like,
awesome.
you big old baby.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wouldn't cross him. But, just a reminder, Monday, February 24th, from 8 to 12, the Caponi Conference Center is a legislative conference. And so you just drive up there, you're already signed in, you're already signed up for it. If you can make it, great. We signed everybody up anyways. And so just want to remind you of that. And I'll make sure that the state reps are reminded on Monday too. The gala, I just want to remind you, if you are planning on coming to the gala this year, we just need to know. If you plan to have a guest with you, we need to know so that we can plan accordingly, because usually, and that's what in the past.
Did I respond to that yet? I thought I-
What are you
You
wearing?
did, you said you and Sky.
What are you wearing?
It's a casual, business casual.
Okay.
Yeah,
When is that?
I mean, I wear suit and stuff like that, but
yeah, it never turns out to be business casual.
no.
Why, people dress up more than
Yeah,
that?
they do.
Some people do,
Yeah,
some
they
people,
do.
it's like,
Doesn't matter to me, but,
yeah. It's like, like I said, anywhere between 250 to 400 people in a room. And it's schmoozing and food and then awards, and then you go home. It breaks up the winter.
no
a little
magic
bit.
show?
Not this year, they're getting away from all that.
Yeah,
This year we're talking about what they've been doing and
yeah.
all that.
And the date, March 19th?
I think it is, it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure.
I don't have it.
It's the Wednesday, because last year they had it on a Thursday and the city came through a fit because they couldn't be there because of council meeting. So it's the 19th, Wednesday, the 19th. Are you away?
No, I'm not, so
Alright.
I don't have my calendar up here, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna plan to go.
So we usually try to go, it's a good networking opportunity for everybody. And
Starts at 5 still?
I think it's 5:30.
Where is it?
Actually, I think we'll be able to
Zorn.
get, I think we're able to get in early because we sponsor
Zorn Dining Commons at the college.
Keene State
Food's
College.
Usually really, really good.
Students are usually, they usually do this because the students are away. So the parking is right there on the Winchester Street parking lot. Well, you can park anywhere.
Great
pretty-
food too.
I'm
Yeah,
hungry just thinking
Yeah.
about it.
yeah, this year I think it's even better. You're gonna be able to eat during the schmoozing time, and then they do the awards right after that, and then you go home. Instead of like schmoozing, you get a little bit of food, and then you have to sit there and the salad comes out, then the main meal comes out, and
That's so painful.
yeah, it's right. So I think this year what they're doing is having the food while you eat, they're gonna have, the roast beef thing cutting and all that, some seafood and some this and that, all that, so it's big.
So yes, 2 of us.
Okay, all right,
I told him he had to come. In our 20-some years together.
Tell them about the food. You didn't-
No, see, he commutes home an hour and a half,
Oh,
so that's, the issue really is getting him to
meet him in
leave.
Keene.
No, he's coming from
From the other way,
Massachusetts,
oh.
right. So trying to coordinate this, I already told him he had to try in his suit, make sure it still fits. And I was nothing like a surprise.
Yeah,
And you
try it
pull
out
out-
more than a week before.
Exactly, because 2 pounds makes a big difference.
I did that several years ago. We had a wedding to go to in Pennsylvania,
mm-hmm,
and the night before, I was packing my suit, and it didn't fit. Oh, shit.
That's.
And it was too late for anything, so
Right.
we stopped at a Spiegel or whatever, something
Yeah.
on a mall on the way down, you know.
Yeah,
It was, yeah. That was
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna keep on going.
Yeah.
life's tips.
Just, we had the Sentinel did a right to know a while ago about some end of the year numbers for the EMS, and so I reached out to them and said, you come in and we sit down and just talk? Because I'm gonna give them any number that we have, but first of all, we're in the midst of the audit where, the books haven't been closed until after that, and I don't wanna give them anything that I haven't told the towns. So I'm gonna be going out to the towns and so I told them all that, and they were fine with that. But then we gave them, I had the chief come, and then Cheryl joined us later on, and we just talked, we went through the whole presentation with them, and they were like, she was taking all kinds of notes and on there and stuff. I said, that's the story. The numbers are always going to be important, but if that's the only time you talk to us is about numbers, then they're not knowing about the impact. They're not knowing about, Smart Ride. They're not knowing about all the other things that we're doing. And she's like, this is great. This could be a 1, 2, or 3 type, article type thing. So
When was this, you spoke with them?
I spoke to them on Monday.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just like, and I had talked to the publisher, Sean Burke, and I said, at some point, either one-to-one or with your whole editorial team, I don't care who's there. We'll answer every question. If we don't have the answer, we'll get it back. We'll get an answer back to you. But let's sit down and really tell the whole story.
Well, it also allows them to take pieces out of context.
Yeah.
They can pick any number and run with it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what's behind it.
Well, they were interested to know that I said, the cool thing is the city of Keene, when they came out and said that their house has been empty over 300 times, well, that means that we're backup. And that means 73 times we've come into the city to back them up out of that 300 times. Doesn't mean that we're not ready to go. It's just
Right.
that no call came in during that time. And they're like, oh, we didn't even think about it that way. It's like,
Oh, she didn't tell him that.
well, it is what it is, but I just want to make sure we tell the whole story. We don't hold back. We're going to give them everything that they ask for, but then tell the whole story. That's all we ask. So she was literally with us for an hour and a half, and that was good. The budget conversation, it looks like it's 3% is where they want to land from the 6.6%, which it is currently, or some change one way or the other. But I will tell you, and I will tell them on Monday, I still have concerns with that. I understand that maybe we can pull monies from here, but if you look at our past record, we've been extremely tight. We've led the state in least taxes to be increased over since 2019, the last 6 years. And if you go back even farther, aside from the year we had the 12.2% because we put a bond out for the renovation and expansion of the nursing home, we've been, I think what we looked at, it was extremely low. I mean, it was, we're very responsible when it comes to our fiscal side of things. And so my concern is that if we don't own it at some point, then if we add this money in, that's forever money in my world. You don't it's just this year. No, now you've created it that we have to get this high every year.
You need to artificially depress the truth.
Yeah, right.
We need to take the hit now if you're gonna do it.
I will always move forward with the direction of the commissioners and the delegation, but I will tell them on Monday that I do have a concern that at some point we may be heading in a direction when we are really going to stress our fund balance.
Well-
And I think they think because you have millions of dollars there that it looks like something, but we don't. We're already using a chunk of that.
They don't want to take the hit with their constituents. I mean, none of us do, because we know it places them in a tougher situation, but the reality is there are costs that just cost.
And if you look at our history, I mean, I sat at the Swansea, Skip, you were there, at the Swansea meeting. it was a 9.3% increase that they were looking at from the town. I get that. I understand why that is. Now, my understanding is not a lot of that changed between, that and the deliberative session. And so it's like, others are able to take this hit, and I'm sorry, but I think you're extending the length of time that we're gonna see this high if you don't own the low. I mean, if you don't own it now, so that's my concern. That's all it is that I've been around long enough to know that, we're going to be stressing things out, and we don't know if they move forward and they put Medicaid block grants, and take Medicaid and put it into block grants, that's compressing all categories of Medicaid into a block grant for the state. That is normally, if you get a block grant, the history shows it is a reduction in the funding you currently are receiving. And the categories are now all in one instead of broken out like it is now. If that's the case, well, what does that mean to the monies we're receiving for ProShare? And I've always said that I want to stay right around $3.1 million because I always felt like that was where it was healthy for us to be. So, and with us having to put monies aside through ProShare, through the IDN, the Integrated Delivery Network systems that we receive the added monies from, my concern is that we're not out of the woods yet with the ambulance service, and we're getting better. We're understanding the system better, but we're only a year old, and so let us, that's my concern, is where does the budget go? And next year, are we going to be next year it's going to be tight. Remember this, we're increasing the federal inmates portion of the budget because we are trying to take that extra money and apply it towards the $650,000 security system that we have to replace at the corrections facility, but we're trying to do it in a thoughtful way instead of hitting the taxpayers with a $650,000 increase. And so that's less money that goes into the fund balance because it's already targeted for something. We're seeing that next year is going to be just as tight as this year. And we're in a tight period of time right now. So I'm just trying to be smart about it and own it when we can.
You said Monday, I thought?
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
right? Tuesday at 7? Sorry.
All right. Tuesday.
Yeah. So if you don't agree, that's fine, but I just feel like I have to put it out there so it's on the record at least. All right, I'm going to keep on moving on. There was a legislative hearing today on funding for ambulance services. It was a subcommittee, a work group session. I don't know how they're going to move forward. Our thing is that they asked us to go up. I asked the chief go up to represent us today because I felt like I had to be here. But we went last week. We spoke. We showed them. We talked about, and I think I even said at one point, we wouldn't be here if the private insurance would just pay what they paid at the end, and we showed them an example of, we had a call that was about $1,900, and they paid us $360 some odd dollars of that $1,900. The person complained. When they complained, they sent a check for $1,600 because that person was going to have to pay the difference. So they complained and said, no, that's not right. So that $360 some odd dollars was 16% of what the total cost was. It's less than what Medicaid was paying. And so why then all of a sudden do they turn around and pay 84% of the overall? Just do it in the first place. Don't play the games. And what we've noticed is this Anthem, they have a habit of this, in that we only have like quarter of those bills people push back. And then why? Because I know why, because they know that people aren't going to complain. They're going to make revenue off this. I mean, it's just a game within a game, and it's putting us over the end. So we made that very clear. We had probably the most questions asked out of anybody that presented. I don't know why, but we did. But I think we were different because we weren't Yeah, well, we weren't fire chiefs, and that's who was speaking mostly.
And we actually came in with some real
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
it gave them something to think about and chew on too.
Yeah,
right,
because we weren't just, complaining, we were giving them the reality of an example of what we're experiencing with the payments that we're receiving. And furthermore, that the payments that we're receiving, if the patient just didn't do anything, which the majority don't, we're getting reimbursed from Blue Cross Blue Shield less than Medicaid and Medicare. And others said that, but we were able to actually give real numbers,
right.
so.
So, that's just our thing. I will tell you that Governor Ayotte was here this morning, but I wasn't notified until 9:12 that I was invited at 10 o'clock. And I would have dragged you all along. I would have just said we push the meeting off a little bit and we just go, because anytime you can have FaceTime with the governor, I think is a good thing. And so, the former mayor of Keene sent me something at 9:12 this morning saying, Chris, if you can join us this morning between 10 and
Well, I got the
11.
notice yesterday.
Yeah, well, I got it today.
You got a notice?
I got a notice from another group that I belong to and an
I mean,
invite.
they're just down there to take pictures of this
Right, but
new
it's
housing development.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
That's why she's coming.
yeah. But I just, usually if a governor is in
I guess I'm
town,
out
I
of the,
tell you.
I'm out of the governor's.
I
league.
usually tell you, like Sununu would always, his office would always, so if he was up at, like, one time Stuart John's, I feel it's important to go up there and have FaceTime with him, and he helped us out because he said, Chris, how are
recognize
you?
the face, that's
You
right.
know, that's what I want us to know, I want them to know who we are, so. And it doesn't always have to be adverse, yeah, whatever it is.
Adversarial.
Yeah, that's it, adversarial,
Yeah, that too.
yeah.
French.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep on going here. I'll get into some of this and this other stuff in a second. We've been working on putting together a money presentation for Winchester on one. We've been, as you are aware, we've been going down there a lot, either supplying a staff person or a truck down there when they don't have any personnel.
We're talking
This was-
EMT.
Yeah, we're talking ambulances,
Yeah.
yep. And initially it was to be because they had vacation during the summer and all that. And so we've now come up with a plan where if they want us, they're going to pay this, this, or this. We'll be presenting that in the near future. At the same time, we'll also be giving them what it will be if they want us to be their backup service. There'll be a readiness fee, and also if they were to consider if they want us to be their primary, this would be the cost. So they have all of that, and they can then make their decisions on their own time and move forward. But they need to know moving forward, this is the pricing it's going to be, and that's what we're going to try to hit when it comes to the towns too. Like, we'll be reaching out to Marlboro in the near future and going back to Harrisville. And Harrisville, we are closing up the deal on the, I'm expecting by the end of the week. And I said to them by the end of February, so I'm right on target to have somebody on board to do the trainings at the higher levels. We do the trainings on this level, but and if it'll be great. If he's going to come on board, he's ready. We just he needs to give us the numbers for that, and we go from there. So we'll have that sewed up so we
That's
can
great.
go back. We can go back to that
Yeah,
too.
that's great.
Yeah, and he's a known figure in the community, and so that will be helpful.
So he's bringing his own credibility, not just ours.
Correct.
Nice.
Correct. He's well respected. So, and that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted for, but I couldn't say it until I nailed the deal. George Streeter. I don't know if you know who George Streeter is. Yeah, he is known for his
Metal detector.
metal detectors. Thank you. He would like to go on our property. He does this thing where he has people from all over the country come and he takes them to sites and they do metal detecting, and I don't have an issue with it. I said I
Which
do.
property?
Their farm area. And I don't have a problem there. If I said, if you go to the DOC, no, because it's a security risk.
Right.
And I said, downtown, you can do that anytime you want. You can walk around our buildings, and he said, no, I'd really like to do some acres out there. And I said, yeah, and he said he has insurance. And, and in the past, we've done riders, but what I've been told by Primex is, here's the thing. He said, Chris, if they trip on your property, they can have a rider all they want, but it's your property they're tripping on. It's sort of like, we have a rider here when we have an event and they have alcohol. We do actually have them have a rider where we're protected. And that's because if they trip in our hall, that's on us. But if they leave here, drive home, and after having drinks served by a licensed person here, and that's the other requirement, then that's on them. So because we used to think it was covering everything, and he said, no. He said, if they trip and fall here, it's on us, it's in our building. So.
Well, more than liability, I would think about the historical situation there.
Mm-hmm.
Why they chose that is that they want to have artifacts
Mm-hmm.
from the 1800s, because that's one of the few places that have not been searched yet.
Yeah.
And who
they're
do
doing
those artifacts belong to?
Yeah.
They're not up for grabs.
Yeah.
Well, they would be.
Well, I know, so they're gonna come through with a pitchfork, dig up shit, say ha, and go home with all the stuff
Well-
that belongs to the county.
Yeah, well, this is the reason I came before you, is because nothing's ever as simple as what it seems.
No,
And they, but the one thing about digging up is they have to, it's sort of like golfing supposedly, when you do a divot, you
Yeah, I'm
need to
not
put it back
concerned
down.
about that.
But it's the stuff that they may find
right.
Right.
it's historical, it's got historical history. And so what do we do there? And so I can bring that back to George and
morning.
just see. I mean, it's not until April anyways. So we have time, but I just thought I'd get it to you ahead of time.
Yeah,
Well,
but if it's open to him, it should be open to anybody.
But it isn't open to him, he
So
wants to, right.
I meant, if.
If you open it to him, then anybody
Why
who
would
wants to
you
go
allow
search
anybody?
for artifacts can.
So I say no.
Because it's gonna be a level of publicity to that piece of land,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and then
first of
other
all,
people without permission will go there.
We lease a
I
lot
can
of that.
deliver any message you want.
I'm like, no.
Well, wait a minute.
No, thank
We
you.
lease a lot of that land.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really our call.
Yeah.
We can't give permission for somebody to go on Stuart and John's leased land. Because it's their lease, it's theirs until whatever.
But
then he
I
would-
actually don't think they're looking for the farmland anyways. I think they're looking for more there's like the forest areas and where somebody might have traveled through.
And I would say no, because anything they find is property, it's history
Yeah,
for the county.
yeah. Yeah,
Either leave it there or give it to us.
okay. Again,
That's my opinion.
Oh, thank you.
alrighty, thank you. So I bring it to you.
I got a metal detector, you want to look?
Hey,
I
go
have
out
it
my
too.
backyard.
Promise I have it.
So, I'm trying to remember what that one is. All right, I'm gonna keep going here. Just an update, the former fire chief stuff continues to be put out there. It continues to be a diatribe of things. Don't know what it really means. I don't know if there's any real actions that are gonna happen out of his writings. He's pretty upset with many people in the city of Keene, and so we'll just leave it at that.
I'm not sure that any of that really has anything to do with the county. And until, if he mentions other things,
Yeah,
such as, his complaint to the Treasury Department, then.
yeah. I don't disagree with you. We're trying to just stay here. But I just bring it up because he did bring something up about the county attorney and his.
Yes.
And I did ask yesterday, And he's like, and this was to his administrative assistant, who knows all that's going on in that office. And she's like, I'm not aware that anything ever came forward to us, but could have. And she said, I'm just not aware of it, but.
Well, Farquhar mentioned it, but
Yeah.
someone else already mentioned it too. Member of the city council mentioned
Oh, really?
it, yeah, to me. So I don't know where that comes from. I mean, of course, because the city of Keene, the city council had a non-public.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, and you can't talk about what happened in that non-public.
Right.
But it sounded to me like that they have decided not to pursue it because of investigations by the Keene Police Department and the county attorney.
Yeah.
But if Chris's office says they didn't do anything,
Yeah.
then it's just, like all the other stuff, it's just gossip.
Yeah. So and the other thing is that on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 19th at 4 p.m., I'll be presenting to a committee via Zoom on the proposal pertaining to funding, to the National Association of Counties around the proposal for working to see if Congress would be willing to put monies aside for infrastructure upgrades for 911 systems throughout the communities, the telecommunication towers that we have. So we'll see. And that's why we're going to DC in March. That's one of the reasons. So. Okay, that's non-public, that's non-public. 18th, next week, the 18th, at 1 o'clock, Westmoreland. And I've had multiple conversations. I've had it with people at the Department of Transportation, C.K. Wilkie and others that are working. The state has told us that the 80%, if the 20% could be matched, they would have the monies to be able to move this project forward, is what I've been told.
We're talking about the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
The bridge, yeah.
Right.
And that people need to remember it's an 80-20 split. So, and it's 80-20 on the design, and it's 80-20 on the bridge. And it's, the bridge is about a $4 million cost, so that's $800,000 the town would have to come up with. And we have a meeting today with at 2 o'clock with John Snowden, who's the chair. I've been working with Suzanne. We may have a way to get the bridge covered and nobody has to spend money but the grant that we can go through. We don't know if it's real yet, but we think the Northern Borders, we might be able to go through Northern Borders and get a bridge.
A wood product bridge then.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, okay, but how much has to be wood
Well,
product?
they just have to, it's the weight thing for the snowplows and the fire trucks.
Yeah, we would have to have,
You like mahogany, really?
yeah, but we would have to figure something out, but it's not abnormal to have that in that kind of infrastructure. You can still have steel beams in that type of infrastructure. You have, it's just what you put around it. So we're in the beginning stages of seeing if we can do it, because you can get $1 million to $5 million grant for this type of project. And so if we could land it, then that's great. But right now, so if we go with the state's thing and it's 80-20, the funding for the design is state money. So you could use federal money to offset that. The 80-20 for the bridge construction itself is Fed money. So we're not sure if we can use Fed money to offset Fed money. We're not sure. We've been able to at times, but you have to explore all these options. So there's a lot on the table right now, but we're just trying to push the agenda. And next week, we've lined it up so that Shaheen's office is gonna have somebody possibly sitting there, and we're gonna have others that are, as many people there to hear the story, to see what we need to do to move forward. So we'll be up there a little early, maybe go to the Barn and Thistle next door to the building. That's a great lunch. And then go over to for the meeting at 1. So that's where we're at for the bridge. Yeah. And I'm just looking to see, pretty much that's what I have. Cheryl, did I miss anything that we've talked about?
No.
Westmoreland is telling us that they have about $200,000 that they could possibly spend towards this project. And so just so you know, I mean, I'm always upfront about this stuff, is I'm more worried about getting the bridge, something done with the bridge. If we can get it through a grant, outstanding. If we can't, and we're just gonna keep, they're gonna say no, then what, do we take them to court? Do we, what leg do we have to stand on? But in the meantime, the bridge stays closed. Flooding season hits us. Partridge Brook Road is now blocked, and for a period of time. It's not the best case scenario for us to have more than 200 employees going in and out of that place, and up to 150 residents we could have in that place. Right now we have anywhere between a low of 98 to a high of 110 in that facility.
For that window of time that Project Brook Road is flooded, then fire protection would be unavailable.
They'd have to go this way. They'd have to go this way.
Well, they'd have to go all the way to
Right.
and somebody said to me the other day, what if there's a tree down? What if there's a few trees down?
Then we
What if
all get fire extinguishers and pray.
Yeah, no, it's just like,
I don't know.
I don't like doing things, I don't like, I can't say what I wanna say, but it's problematic to me in that I just wanna see what we can do to get it done. And if that meant far-fetched, which is, well, it's not far-fetched, it's outside the box thinking, is what if we bond it and they pay the bond back? Or they pay the primary and we pay the interest, or something like that, and we do a 20-year bond for $800,000, and Cheryl said today it's like 40,000.
40,000 principal,
Yeah.
about 32,000 first year of interest that declines. What, they did mention something about not being able to bond. Is it because they bonded recently and they're not gonna get the support of the town, or can they not? Because remember like years ago, well, we've done it twice, we've actually bonded for the state of New Hampshire to build courts, and then they pay us 100% back.
Right.
But they do it because they don't have the capacity to
Chapter
do
Court.
more.
I didn't get the impression they were maxed out. I think that they just didn't want to go to the town, go to the people.
Okay, that's what I was just
Maybe-
thinking.
Right, I think they bonded twice recently,
For
and
the
why they
fire
couldn't go
station?
for something.
No, they did, they bonded
Twice.
for the fire station, and then they bonded for
Something, but they can't,
solar or something like
right,
that.
I don't think they felt like they were able to bond a third time, and,
I think
I
it's
think
more
they maxed
that the citizens wouldn't support
Yeah, that's what I
support
think.
this, and at the same time, they have 4 or 5 other bridges. But my thing is, I can't worry about what they can and can't do. What I have to worry about is how do we best serve the individuals that that we're in our care up there? And are we, if you look at the runs, they're the 3rd highest run
so
in Westmoreland.
it's really about risk management.
Right.
That's all we're trying to figure out, is something is gonna come down the pike.
Yeah.
And where is our liability if we do nothing?
Yeah.
Then we would have known that there was a risk and
Yeah.
didn't do what we needed to do to prevent. And so if we bond for that, right, they still have to get the money from their people. It's not that because they've overextended their line of credit, it's now they get a line of credit from us, but they still have to pay it back. They're still gonna have to go to their people.
But putting in the budget, the bottom line of a $40,000 or $72,000 cost to the town over 20 years is different than going in and saying, I need to bond for $800,000 or $900,000.
So what are we gonna, how much are we bonding for them?
We would bond $800,000.
Correct, and so they would carry, it's still,
A line item that they would have.
They-
and
they
it's
carry.
still a line item.
I get it, I get that, but it's less, I mean, we have to come up with some.
Semantics.
Oh, it is, I'm not
Visual
opposed to it, I mean,
Yeah.
the bridge has to be fixed.
Yeah.
But I still hear them saying to their people, well, we're gonna bond for a third time, we're just gonna get it from our friend Frankie.
Yeah,
Right, you know?
from who, Frank?
But,
Well, and because it's in our own interest, would it be, that they pay the 40 and we pay the 30 or something? We can have those discussions at the end of the day. There is
there are
no
other
other
costs.
facility, people are always worried, what kind of, what are you setting here if we go down this road? Well, we've done it in the past in Jaffrey, and we did it twice because the day before it was open, it burnt down. And then the second time when they rebuilt it, okay. So we done that. And this time around, it's like, we don't have any other situation that would be like this. I don't have any other facility in a town we're next to something this is different. This is, affecting.
well, I think it's a good option because the liability on us for risk management
Yeah.
is tremendous.
Yeah.
It is tremendous if we're not proactive.
Yeah, I agree. So it's gonna be an interesting conversation, and I just want you guys to be aware of it because it's gonna be coming up. Terry, just on the fleet management thing, I wanted you to know that, it's weird, I think my phone listens to me, because I've
But you
got
know it
two.
does.
Yeah, I know it does, but I've had two situations of people offering fleet service management help. So I'm gonna bring them in and listen to them, but I think it's three ways that we're looking at it. One is, how are we managing now? Would it make more sense for us to just do it that way and get software that's consistent across all campuses that are managing it? Two is, do we bring somebody in to management, which I don't think is the answer. Or three, which we started this year with Enterprise, but they, again, didn't get back to us, and when they did get back to us, the numbers didn't make sense. And then, last but not least, they didn't do ambulance oversight at all. Is there somebody out there that could manage this better than what we're doing? So we'll take a look at all that.
Well, first I wanted to get a handle on, okay, I know that all of the vehicles are presently being looked after by the department that they're in.
Correct.
Okay. I guess, I don't have a problem with that because, we don't have a lot of maintenance issues anyway because of the age of most of the vehicles and such.
Yeah.
But, is there a central maintenance book, law for all of these vehicles that one person could just oversee? Wouldn't take a lot of work, I wouldn't have to be creating a whole new department or anything. Maybe it'd be under Steve's purview for safety, is to just look at each one of the department's log books or whatever they have, and to combine it into something that we can just go into the shelf and look.
Yeah.
That way we can better manage, when a vehicle, we replace vehicles every couple of years or every 3 years or whatever like that. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the condition of the vehicle. We just, generally just put them on a rotation.
Well, we don't replace them every 3 years per se, because we own them in 3 years. Like with the sheriff, we own them, and then we keep them around for another year or two, and then mileage dictates more than anything else.
So why can't we have an electronic database that tracks vehicles by VIN number?
Mhm.
And is somebody putting information in there on the status of that vehicle from each of those departments? Are they doing that where it's kept in one central location?
That would be the first thing. Is there software out there already
Right.
that we could purchase that would be consistent? Do we already have a system in place that we could have other departments utilizing it, so we don't even have to do the expense of software if we
Right.
already have a system.
I'm not saying that it's not happening, but it's not happening in a consolidated
Right,
shared space. I'm certain if Eli, and I feel like the sheriff, and I feel like he said this, he does have somebody that specifically does that, and they keep track of everything.
And you saw Charlie here for,
Yeah.
and
So-
he's got a great handle on it.
But it is.
But as a whole, we don't have a picture of all the, and it's just, if they're already doing it, and it was a shared software database, then all of that information is in one place. And anybody who's still managing their department is still managing their department. They're still in control, but they're just now putting it into a shared location so that if that person, the safety guy, was to look at it and in its entirety, he would have a complete picture of the fleet status for the county vehicles, period.
We can start heading down that road, because the first thing I would need to do is I need to have a conversation with Catherine, because if we're talking about Steve sort of falls underneath Catherine. And,
We're using her employee.
but he's a shared, he is, and
Okay.
actually, when I say that, it's because they have the highest level of falls, they have the highest level of issues
Yeah.
and so that's where he's located.
Okay,
He actually falls under HR.
Not literally.
No.
No.
And-
and scoop them up.
yeah, so we can start having that conversation.
But I mean, we get asked questions so regularly about
Yeah,
this. We
Because
don't
it's
have
really
the
just a
information.
shared database and somebody to put eyes on it occasionally.
yeah, no, I think that's fine. We can start having that conversation. So, and I know it's getting near 12 and I have two other things, so
Yes.
I wanna get through that. So old business, any new business, vote to accept the weekly manifest and minutes of February 5th, 2025. All right, second, okay.
Yes,
And so Commissioner Clark,
yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes,
and Commissioner DiBernardo.
Yes.
All right, calendar, I don't think there's anything that I'm aware of except for Tuesday at 7 o'clock
and 1 o'clock.
and 1 o'clock. Up at the
Westmoreland.
Westmoreland, yeah.
What's Tuesday at 7?
The
budget hearing.
delegation, executive
Continue
committee
of the
meeting.
Oh, yeah,
budget
yeah,
hearing
right.
here.
All right,
Here.
so the only thing, we do have a quick, non-public, I wanna make you aware of something that's come about. It is, RSA 91-A:3-2D, consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, personal property, which if discussed in public would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community.
So we have to shut this thing off?
Oh, yeah, I just have to hit pause.
Move we go to,
All right, second, Commissioner Clark,
yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
and Commissioner DiBernardo, okay? We are in non-public,
Should we shut the door?
I don't
I
know.
will do that, yes.
Hey Doug? I don't know how to.
Just,
What do you have to do to pause?
I can kick them off.
Yeah, you just have to hit this right here. See, I did that.
Look at you.
Yeah.
You're only gaining some skills. Davis will be proud of you.
Okay, so we're not putting the amount on the federal revenue on this anymore?
We'll get that to you. Yeah, we can get that to you. I don't know why it's not, but we can get it to you. So we're back in session and,
Held a non-public session to discuss land issues, and no decisions were made and no votes were taken.
that's right. All right, so with nothing else to come before us, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second?
All right, Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner DiBernardo.
Yes. Thank you. We've learned so much today.
I always learn
My
something.
gosh.
Hopefully we didn't overwhelm you with too much today. I mean, Mike was a little, yeah.
No, I think Mike,
I thought Mike was great.